It's on. I got a green light. I got a green light. Okay. I'll do it again for the third time. I'll call the Wednesday, April 27th, 2022 meeting of the Cumberland Planning Board to order. Roll call, Ms. Roshich.
Here.
Mr. McDonald. Here. Mr. Butler.
Here.
Mr. Scown. Here. Mr. Bush. Here. Ms. Reese.
Here.
Mr. D'Ambrosia.
Here.
Mr. Costa is absent, and the chair is present. Before we begin, I have a notice to read. This meeting is also being held virtually on the Zoom platform. If you have any interest in any item on the agenda, we will turn on your audio and promote you to a panelist as the item is called. If you would like to comment or ask a question, please raise your hand by clicking on the button labeled "Raise Your Hand" when the chairman opens the floor for public comment. Next item of business, approval of the planning board minutes of March 30th, 2022 and April 12th, 2022. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions?
I'll make a motion that we approve both sets of minutes as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler,
Second.
second by Ms. Vrashich. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 3, Director's Report. I have a notation here that there is no report, Mr. Stevens. There's nothing else to add at this one. Okay. Item 4, Zoning Board of Review recommendation. Owner applicant Matthew Windish and Lori Griffin. Location 23 Windsong Road, Assessors Plat 37, Lot 1045. The applicant requests relief from a rear yard setback to build a shed. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This property includes a single-family dwelling built in 1999. The parcel is about 25,700 square feet, more than the required minimum lot size of 25,000 square feet. Around the back of the property, there's an opaque white vinyl fence that's 6 feet high that encloses the backyard. The applicant is proposing to install a shed approximately 192 square feet and about 14 feet high. The shed will be placed in the corner of the fenced yard and 6 feet from the rear lot line. The minimum rear yard setback is 25 feet, so 19 feet of relief is requested. The planning department finds that the proposed project is consistent with the goals and purposes of the comprehensive plan. There are other properties in the neighborhood that have backyard sheds. The size of the shed is modest relative to the size of the house and property, and it will be largely screened from view by the 6-foot fence. And most importantly, the 2 adjacent property owners have provided letters stating they have no objection to the proposal. So the planning department is recommending the planning board forward a favorable recommendation to the zoning board of review to approve the requested relief from the rear yard setback requirement.
Does the board have any questions or comments for Mr. Modica? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion in regards to 23 Windsong Road, Assessors Plat 37, Lot 1045, that we send a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Review that the application is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and include with the decision Mr. Modica's memo of April 20th, 2022.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Reese. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Item 5, public informational meeting, minor subdivision preliminary plan. Project name, Scott Road Minor Subdivision. Owner applicant is SNB Properties. Location 113 Scott Road, Assessors Plat 39, Lot 13. The applicant requests preliminary plan approval to subdivide an undeveloped 17.7 acre property into 2 parcels of 7.7 acres and 10 acres. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicants, as you said, proposing to subdivide this 17.7 acre property Parcel A will be 7.7 acres and parcel B will be 10 acres, which greatly exceeds the 2-acre minimum required in this A2 zone. The project also meets all zoning requirements and all requirements from our land development and subdivision regulations. There is a good amount of wetlands on the property, but there's still more than enough upland and contiguous buildable area. These are irregularly shaped lots, largely due to the 2 lots that were subdivided in the late 1960s from this larger property. But in terms of ratio between lot width to lot depth, the proposed lots do meet the required ratio of 2.5 to 1 or less. And there's a letter from Mr. Mike Darvo, who was attested to that fact, and the planning department concurs with this assessment. The southern parcel, parcel B, there's a narrow watercourse and wetlands that runs parallel to Scott Road that would constrain building a new entry drive. So instead, the property will be accessed from Scott Road via an existing easement through the existing driveway that leads to 109 Scott Road. In sum, as stated in the Planning Department memo of April 20, 2022, the Planning Department finds the project as proposed is consistent with the goals and purposes of the comprehensive plan, and we recommend the Planning Board approve the preliminary plan.
Does the board have any questions or comments? Yes, sir. For the record, could you please come to the podium and give us your name and address for the record?
Joseph Santangelo. I live on 47 Brookwood Lane in Cumberland, and I am directly impacted by this situation. When we bought the property back in 2004, we were told, based on the wetlands and everything else that was in that area, that there was not going to be any development whatsoever. Right. Now, I'm extremely concerned by the privacy that we're gonna lose, not to mention our property value and what have you.
Where are you located in relation to this property?
Directly behind it.
Behind.
Mm-hmm.
On what street?
47 Brookwood Lane.
Okay. Runs off of, Brookwood runs off of what street?
Angel Road.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so you can see how it affects us. Not to mention that we have several animals. We have dogs that would like to run around in the backyard. They're going to be terrified with all the noise and the sound. Everything's going to be going on and disturbing the peace of this neighborhood that's been wonderful for the last 15 years.
The question that I have is that you were told there'd be no development. Can I
That's
ask
correct.
you where you learned that information?
I'm sorry?
Wait a minute, this gentleman first. Yes, sir. Sure. You don't have to go one by one. You can,
Okay.
unless you don't want to.
I'm sorry.
Unless you don't want to be together.
I really don't want to be here, but you guys aren't leaving me much of a choice.
Okay.
All right, a couple of things. I spoke to the previous owner, okay, who told me that he would never develop on that property. It could not be developed on. Okay, he used to come through the woods all the time and talk to me over the fence.
This is the previous owner
Yeah.
of the wetlands, of the property. behind us.
Unfortunately, he passed. I guess the property got sold, and I guess money is the issue here. And sure enough, they get what they want, disturbing the peace, destroying our property, decreasing our value. They have like 30 plus acres back there. Why does it have to be done right behind our house? That's what I would like to know. And not only that, but people came and marked trees. They went on our property. I would not have left them on our property if they told us what they were doing.
Yes. Okay, all right, I can do that. Does the board have any questions for the abutters? Mr. McDonald?
I'd like to ask the gentleman, would you have bought the land if he hadn't told you that?
Definitely not.
Okay.
I came from New York, in case you can't tell by my accent, I apologize.
Yeah, but you're not from Brooklyn.
questions.
Really? I would have never known.
One of the reasons why we bought this property was because of that serenity, the woods, the quiet, and everything else. And if I would have known that there was a possibility that I was going to be building on that particular land, I probably would have bought it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't know if you're still continuing with public comment, but there is someone on Zoom with their hand raised.
Oh, okay. If you don't mind, Mr. Rest. Oh, absolutely, certainly. Is there anyone else who has a comment regarding this project?
Just say yes, something.
Okay, hang on. So Paul, I'm going to promote you to panelist. Give your name and address, please. And Paul, if you want to speak, you need to unmute yourself. There's a icon on the lower left. Where is he? Okay, I don't see that he made it, but there is Ben. No, here's Paul. Paul, you're a panelist now. Can you say something? Give us your name and address. So you need to unmute yourself. There's a little microphone in the lower left.
There it is. How's that? Everything went blank.
All right.
Okay, I'm Paul LaFlamme. I'm the owner of 133 Scott Road, my wife and I. And I have a concern about the plans. We currently, there's a buffer of 25 feet between my land. If you're looking at my house, it's on the left side, okay? 25 feet between my border and the street that's being proposed there, okay? I don't know if you've got the map or the plans laid out in front of you, but you can see it. My only concern, and I think it's not a major concern, is that the proposed limit of disturbance, right now, that is basically right on my border, which tells me that that 25 feet buffer will be disturbed, or it's being protected for having the that border limit of disturbance is too close to my property.
I'm looking for the 25-foot buffer, and I don't
Okay,
see it noted
let me
on
pull up the
plan.
plans and see if I can help you. Okay.
I'll try to, I didn't think, yeah, let me see if I can find it. Yeah.
Glenn?
Found
Yeah,
it?
I'm gonna call him up. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna share my screen. I hope.
Yep,
Let's see.
not seeing your screen.
Okay. So here's the plan.
Yep, and it's, if you see 133 Scott Road, so towards the left lower corner, where the proposed road is gonna,
Oh, okay.
Is it down here?
in the lower left-hand corner. Yeah. You see my property?
I see. Lower left. Neil J. Buskey is the owner. Are you close to 295?
No. I'm within the whole proposed plan. If you see the property, you see where the gas line goes? That's right on my border.
Yes,
Okay. Right here.
Okay,
that's Mr. LaFlame, right?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And this isn't a good diagram of what my concern is. If you go to the actual plan page, and I wish I knew what it was, you'll see that there's a border of, or a limit of disturbance.
Huh. What page?
No, that, it's more for the wetlands. Ah, now you're getting.
First page?
Why don't
The
No, this doesn't show it either.
sheet 3.
It's basically where they're gonna put the
Where are we?
hay bales down, or some type of containment.
For convenience, but this will cost for limited disturbance. Definitely kept 25 feet off this property.
I gotta find it.
It's not a regular, it's an agreement just between the two parties. Not equal. We can certainly.
Okay. So,
Yes, Mr. President? Well, that was the next thing I was gonna do, is I was gonna ask Mr. Darvo if he could help us. You, please. No. You've been before us so many times.
Okay, I'm Michael Darvo, professional land surveyor, owner of Darvo Land Surveying. We've prepared these plans. The property that the gentleman is describing on Zoom,
what do you want me to
is
show?
shown on the screen. The house that's shown, the abutting property, that's his house.
Yes,
And I'm just told that there's a written agreement between him and our owner, but it's not a recorded agreement. It's just an agreement that they put together recently.
I think it has been, it's in the deed.
Yeah, okay. I didn't see it in the course of our survey, so I don't know how new it is.
Okay, it's
Point
fairly
being-
recent, within the past year and a half.
Point being that we did place the driveway. The owner did ask to put the driveway away from your property, which we did, towards the 295 side, as you can see on the plan. There is a small rain garden adjacent to the driveway that DEM requires for stormwater controls, which is
Yep.
shown on the plan adjacent to Scott Road. There is definitely more than 25 feet from that rain garden to your property line.
Right, what I'm,
Yeah, well, if I could finish, please.
okay,
We did propose the limited disturbance going right to Scott Road just because it was a straight line. No other reason. We can certainly modify that for the final and place to be sure that there's at least 25 feet to your property as agreed upon, that I just found out about like 5 minutes ago.
okay, that's fine. I'd like to see that. If I could be notified when that happens.
Yeah, we could provide you a copy of the plan or something if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Would that be sufficient?
Yes, that's fine.
And Mr. Chairman, that's certainly, we would accept that as a condition
Okay.
to final approval to the extent the board were willing to take a vote this evening. I just wanted to add a couple quick things
certainly.
for the record.
Let us know who you are.
Michael Resnick on behalf of the applicant and
Thank
the owner. As you know, I'm joined here today by our engineer, our surveyor, Michael Darvo. And I just want to let the board know that based on our consultation with Mr. Monica, this was deemed complete. A certificate of completeness was issued as a minor subdivision. And as Mr. Monica had represented to you, the purpose of the application is to divide Plat 39, Lot 13 into 2 parcels. The total acreage of that parcel now is 17.75 acres. And because we are not requiring waivers and because this is a project that consists solely of the creation of 1 additional lot, 2 parcels, it's been deemed minor. So we're in total agreement with Mr. Monica's report this evening and his recommendation. I would also note for the record that the proposed access easement was deemed acceptable by the town's fire department. And we have, RIDEM has issued permitting for this project, an insignificant alteration to freshwater wetlands. And as such, as part of our preliminary application, wetlands have been delineated. And I'd also advise the board that we've obtained OWTS permits for each of the newly created parcels. And for a project such as this, because it's less than 3 lots, Rhode Island state law does not require radius. So we've obtained all the DM permitting that we need. I know that we just addressed the second community member's concern. As it relates to the first community member, and with respect, this project is in conformance with the town's subdivision regulations. It's totally in conformance with the town's zoning ordinance. And quite frankly, property owners have the right to develop their property so long as they do it within the zoning ordinance, within the regulations, and so long as they obtain from the state whatever permitting that they require. And in this instance, that permitting is from Rhode Island. So while I understand there may have been a representation by a previous owner, that's certainly not binding on my client. It's certainly not a representation that would run with the land, as they say, in any way, shape, or form. And so for that reason, while we understand the objection, it should not be a basis for this board to consider a denial. We would request that the board take a vote this evening for preliminary approval. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Darbo is here to answer any questions as well.
Does Mr. McDonald?
I just wanted to say something to the gentleman. The reason why I asked the question about a previous owner is it's not the first time that this has occurred where someone in good faith buys property after what in effect is a misrepresentation of the previous owner to affect the sale. What the attorney representing the applicant has represented is accurate. They've met all the legal requirements. There's no reason to deny it.
All right, so with all due respect, the inconvenience that it's going to create for our neighbors and myself is extraordinary. I mean, we're going to have constant construction going on right behind our house for God knows how long. Okay, there goes my peace and quiet. There goes the ability to go outside and relax with my family, with my dogs, whatever it is. I understand that land gets developed. I get that, okay? But I want to know then, is there something that can be done for us?
What are you looking for?
I don't know, you tell me. Maybe a tax break?
Well,
Maybe something.
we don't have the authority to dictate tax policy, sir.
So it's just like, you know,
No, you.
guts, doesn't matter.
No, I'm trying to tell you that I appreciate your position and I understand why you feel the way you feel.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this on occasion over the years to other people that are in your position. The only way to secure peace regarding surrounding property, surrounding land, is to buy it.
Is that easy, though?
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
So why would you say that? Okay, that's not an answer. Okay, that to me is just, it's like what they said, what they just said about when Congress said, if you don't like the gas prices, then go buy an electric car. That's basically what you just said.
I wasn't trying to upset you. I was trying to tell you that that's the only recourse that someone has if they want to secure a piece of property and prevent it from being developed. You have to buy it.
Unfortunately, the owner of this property pays taxes, has a constitutional right to develop the land as long as it's within the town ordinances, the subdivision regulations, the zoning. These are very difficult decisions for us. And I've told this story 100 times on this board. There were 3 empty lots next to my house, and now there's 3 houses next to my house. Thankfully, my grandfather, who owned the house before me, bought the empty lot right next to us, so I at least have a buffer. But because he bought the land, he had the foresight to do that. I wish he had bought the other 3 too, because now I look at 2-story capes where I used to be able to look right into Lincoln. It's maddening and it's upsetting, but we deny this application. Mr. Resnick, who's an excellent lawyer, will be in Superior Court tomorrow getting this decision overturned because it meets the regulations.
Excuse me, if you don't, I can continue if you want. Okay. All right, Mr. Darbo still here?
Yes.
Yeah, I know that you talked to Mr. Modica, and just for clarification, that septic system.
Okay,
Some people don't understand the rules. The laws.
Ladies and gentlemen, the acoustics are not great in this, in the chambers, a lot of echo. So if you could keep it to a whisper, and if need be, feel free to, go out in the hallway and have a little chat and then come back. It's just, the noise just bounces off the walls and the ceiling, and it's very difficult to hear. Yes, Mr. Resnick. He's doing the holding, so go ahead, Mr. Dow.
so as Vanna turns the board for us, the question that was posed to me earlier were the two parcels that we kind of encompass. My understanding is that both those existing homes have public water. So there's no wells on their property. In the course of our survey, we didn't find any wells either. We obviously didn't scour their property, just a visual look from, from the borders. We didn't see an obvious well. Regarding the septics, they're typically in the back of the property, back of the house. All the homes don't tend to be far away from the homes like they are now with pumps and those type of things, because of the construction methods back, 20, 50 years ago and so forth. We can certainly look at DEM's records as best as possible to see if there are any existing records on the septics. We can show them for the final plan as a, as a note. And same thing to see if there is, we can verify that the public water is connected.
Well, I think it's easy to say that it's noted here on your plan that it says proposed LLC, deed, blah, 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 and the septic system and so on. It's not part of this project. Correct?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. This is lot 291 you're referring to.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, if you're referring to.
No.
I'm
No,
sorry.
it's
sorry.
shows up on the plan as a proposed, actually, there's a proposed well and a proposed septic system. So it's not part of this project.
Lot 291 is a separate standalone lot that we happen to get approval from DEM through septic, wetlands, and so forth, for a house, a septic, and a well. And on the blow up of that particular area, it does show where it is. It is certainly on its own lot, on that separate lot.
Yeah.
It's not part of our subdivision.
Right, no, it's not part, that's my big question.
In fact, that lot was smaller before we started this whole process. We expanded that through an administrative subdivision process with the planning department, and we created more land for that lot so that there was more separation to the wetlands and so forth.
Okay.
And out of the buffers to give it a better appearance and so forth.
It wasn't a big question. I wanted to make sure that the proposed septic system that you're proposing for the new lot is what's further up the driveway.
Correct.
And this one here that's shown here has absolutely nothing to do with.
Correct.
Yeah, that's all.
We're just showing where they are in the
Right.
area as a reference.
Yeah, I realize as a surveyor, you have to locate all features that are joining, that are adjacent to the
It's
properties.
actually
surrounding the
something
property.
that DEM looks at. And
Yeah.
it's their requirements when we do
Okay.
our septic system designs
Okay.
for our lot. I do want to note that our two proposed lots at this time are proposed to be wells, even though there is public water on Scott Road. The distance from the road, if you notice with these long driveways and so forth, we just felt it was more, it was probably going to be more realistic that a well was put in instead of bringing up a water line that whole distance. So we did propose the wells with the septics. If they were to put in public water, if they wanted to, it's available in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add one final request. To
Certainly.
the extent that we were lucky enough to receive a favorable vote this evening, we would ask that final be done administratively with the planner based on his positive recommendation as presented to you this evening.
Okay, thank you. The board have any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, there are two more people on Zoom.
Okay,
Jared Messier, you're already panelist. Here you go.
How you doing? I am the owner of 109 Scott Road, plat 39 to lot 288. The Parcel B will be using the easement that is located on my property. Looking at the plans, the proposed rain garden looks to be within 10 feet of property line. Is Mr. Darvo, probably that's a question for you. Is that standard? It seems to be pretty close, and then I want to know how that would affect.
The simple answer is that there are no setback requirements from property lines to rain gardens. We did have certain setback requirements from wetlands, from a driveway, from the septic systems, so on, foundations and so forth. And that was the best obvious place to put it.
Okay. So there's no possible effect of this thing possibly flooding, water coming onto my property, et cetera.
It's designed to flow away from your property after it does fill, and if it does overtop.
My understanding of a rain garden is the runoff does go to the rain garden, okay? It's basically a depression of some sort. And I'm under the impression that most of that water is just going to seep into the ground. Is that correct?
Basically, the rain garden is designed for what we call a 1-inch storm event. So 1 inch of rain in a 24-hour period will be absorbed and contained in the rain garden. That's how the calculations have been worked out with DEM. If we get a deluge of 2 inches of rain in an hour or something like that, which tends to happen every now and then, there will be some overtopping. The berm that's located on the rain garden is designed to act as a level spreader so that there's no channelized and erosion and channelized flow out of the rain garden. But the requirement is for 1 inch of runoff, and the berm is designed to be away from any potential flooding hazards of another building and so forth.
So the berm itself is going to keep the water or contain the water within the garden, am I correct?
Right.
Not anticipating that it would overflow.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
No, Mr. Chair, we had one more person.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Sir.
If you want to come up to the podium, give your name and address.
Hi, my name is John Ribeiro. I live at 25 Springhouse Lane. It's right behind where this alleged subdivision is going in. I have some concerns, obviously, since the house that's going to be built is going to be pretty much behind my property. And I have the same concerns as that gentleman that was here that was a little upset, I guess. He didn't get the right answers. So with all this property, I mean, idea, so many acres, 17 acres, 20 acres, 30, whatever acres it is, why are the houses being built, the design being done right near the properties that already exist? If there's so much acreage out there, why not move the houses away from the other people, from people's properties?
Well, I can tell you.
So that's the first thing.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Davo can answer that question, but I can answer it easy. If you notice, and since you are out there, you live there.
Yes, I've lived there 25 years,
that
yes.
there's quite a bit of wetlands there.
Right.
So what the Mr. Davo did was site the house in a location where really there's no place you could put the house because of all the surrounding wetlands.
And the reason why I asked the acreage part is that, the gentleman putting in for the applicant keeps talking about many acres, and, we're really only using a minor part of it, and that's really the gist of the issue here.
Absolutely.
They have a lot of acreage, but only 1 or 2 acres of that 30 acres is really usable.
It's very, very tight.
The other concern is I have, if you could put up a plot, parcel B, which is where closest to my house, obviously. There is a lot of wetlands there. With the house being built on that parcel B, I guess. I have a question for you. Sure. That's okay. what is on the map here? Is the house being built here or is the house being built up there?
The house is being built where it's shown as a proposed house.
Okay, so what's this parcel up there then?
That is another piece of land. It's surrounded by wetlands. It's a knoll where it comes up.
Okay,
It's,
so,
upland areas.
so will this eventually be a buildable lot also?
We're not proposing anything but those two houses.
Okay, so today you're not proposing that?
The lots will be
Yeah,
sold.
okay, yeah, okay. And this is my point, right? So it's another one of my points here, obviously. Today they're coming to you with, you know, these two lots. Next year, they'll come to you with another lot. Next year, and according to you, everything that's being done is under the legal limits or whatever our state and town, okay? But we can't just because they have their rights to build. And I'm not against building properties, obviously, we built there too, right? But just because they have some rights, what are the rights of the existing owners for peace of mind? What are the rights of, once houses are being built there with all these wetlands, that the water runoff won't make our properties into wetlands? So these are, you know, some of the questions that I'm sure the people that surround those two lots have, well, especially the parcel B lot, which is the one that I'm really concerned about.
The properties have to be developed to meet all of the standards, the town standards, the state standards, Department of Environmental Management standards. You know, the applicant is going to have to submit these plans to DEM and prove that no other surrounding property is going to get flooded out because of this, you know, construction, that any water that's being created by impervious surfaces is staying on that property. So there are protections. I don't think they're perfect, and I'm sure the town staff would agree they're not perfect, but there are protections in place, you know.
Well, these are some of the protections that in the past have failed us, right?
I
mean, how many times?
I agree 100%.
How many times there's a landowner or a homeowner is living in a property for years and years, all of a sudden a house is being built and all of a sudden you're flooded. So their rights are taken care of because everything was done properly according to the law, yet the guy is drowning in the backyard.
I agree 100%. We've all dealt with it. But as we always say to applicants, this board is not omnipotent. I mean, we can only look at the plans and the permits and trust that all the other pieces of government, the DEM and zoning and town officials and the building official are keeping an eye on all of this stuff and making sure that everything's done to the letter of the law. But as I said to the other folks, and I know it's frustrating to hear, if a taxpayer comes in and says, I have a piece of land that's buildable within all of the ordinances and I've got all the DEM permits, there's absolutely nothing this board can do to say, well, we just don't like it, I'm sorry. And believe me, there are times we wish we could,
No,
but we can't. But I completely understand where you're coming from and the frustration. And every single person on this board has expressed this in other meetings. We all get it. But we have a charge, you know, our attorney sits right there, and if we were going off base, she'd rein us back in. I mean, we have to protect everybody's rights to the best we can.
So
but your frustrations have been heard, absolutely.
The other gentleman that was here earlier also had concerns about what he was told when he first built his house, right? So we were kind of told, everyone in the neighborhood was pretty much, whether they were told or understood or whatever, okay? But either way, there's a house already that's gonna have the easement, the driveway is going, that house is the house that originally owned all that property, I believe. We knew the people well, and so we knew the people next door also. When were these lots subdivided? Were they already, was it understood that that property where that house stood, the other lots already existed, or was the lots subdivided after the property was bought? And I don't know if you have that answer or not.
That's what's before us tonight, is they're asking for permission to subdivide the land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So why should you give them the permission?
Because there's not a legal reason not to.
The owners of the previous property that were there before, they own the house, they own all their land. That was just one parcel, is that correct? So we're allowing them to subdivide because,
Because they have a legal right to do that.
okay.
This is not going to help, but it maybe as a lesson learned. One thing I've learned on this board, and I'm not planning to move anytime soon, but if I ever was looking at a piece of land that was surrounded by woods, and I really like those woods, I would not ask the real estate agent, I would not ask the neighbor, I would not ask the abutters. I would immediately come to town hall, sit down with the building official and the planning department and the zoning board and say, who owns that property and what legally can they do on that property? Because I really like those woods and I'm not buying this house and I can keep those woods. So, you know, unfortunately, what neighbors told you, what abutters told you, what previous owners told you, none of it has any legal
Right, I understand
bearing.
that.
Yeah.
My biggest concern is the wetlands that are there now.
And that's,
Okay, so that's a big concern of ours. If there's wetlands there now, if the property is developed and the runoff or whatever is not being done properly, then what defense do we have? Is that when I get a lawyer? Is that, or are you guys liable for allowing this to happen? I guess that's my question.
ultimately, it becomes an issue with the building official. But again, Mr. Darvo is responsible for submitting to us plans that mitigate all those issues.
Right.
And that has to all be approved by the Department of Environmental Management. They have to look at it and say, yep, the wetlands aren't going to be disturbed and there's not going to be any additional runoff. If that were to happen, then you have recourse through the town building official and zoning officials to get a remedy to that situation.
We've all been around long enough to know that whatever's on paper doesn't mean anything. Bulldozers go in, trees start being cut, things start moved, and then all of a sudden, everything is cleared, and what I hear from the town is, well, you know, we'll try to fix it, but that's after the fact. And I'm here trying to.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just briefly address.
Just 1 minute, Mr. Resnick. The criteria that this board deals with, okay, when it comes to subdividing property, meaning, and how can you split a lot into one lot, two lots, or several lots? Each lot that you're subdividing has to, first of all, have adequate frontage according to the zoning ordinance, okay? And it has to have adequate area under the zoning ordinance. You can't build, you know, a house on a lot that's not zoned. Let's say it's only zoned for 25,000 square feet, okay? Then you can build on that 25,000 square foot lot, okay? That's one of the criteria. So when you start cutting up, you couldn't take a 25,000 square foot lot, cut it in half, I think you can subdivide it. No, you can't because.
Right, I get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and the frontages are concerned.
Yeah.
Some of the constraints there are, of course, is wetlands and so on. And to clear up a couple other matters before I'll have Mr. Resnick speak. In the packet that was sent to us, okay, the applicant has secured from the state approval, right, for their septic systems. Okay, so, you know, they have to go through the not just the application process. The state comes out, they look at the property, they look at water tables, and can the property support a septic system, okay? If they're not connected to sewers, okay? Well, in this case, I have right before me, you can see this green sheet. That's the approval from the ISDS. Now, relative to the wetlands, we also have a letter, okay, from Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management indicating that this is an insignificant alteration and they have a permit for that.
I have a problem with that word insignificant, okay? What's insignificant to one, maybe is more significant to us.
I think most of us do.
Mr. Chairman, I think the gentleman wants to know whether this lot can be further subdivided. And I think based on frontage alone, I don't see it.
Right.
So I'm not, I'm not sure that this is going to satisfy him.
But, I mean, that's under zoning, I'm sorry. That's under zoning today, and that's under what the conditions are today. So we're not making any promises about the future, because I don't want you to be in the same situation here 20 years from now.
No, absolutely, I know exactly, and I appreciate that, but we
But
know
this
one.
proposal meets all zoning requirements, and there's nothing that's been presented to this board tonight that would allow them to deny this particular application. That's it. I mean, it's really a legal answer. There's nothing before this board tonight that anyone has presented that would allow them to deny this application.
One thing that I lived in this town for a long time, and one thing that I see a lot of times is what's being done today, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, something else changes, and all of a sudden, something that couldn't happen in 5 years ago, now it's happening. And we are allowing it to happen, okay? So to your point, you're absolutely correct. You're just going by today's.
Correct.
But we all know that if somebody in somebody's mind is to redevelop some other property here, and things change. To the DEM part.
If they change their rules.
Right.
I think that you really have to stick to the application that's before the board tonight.
Right.
Yeah, that's the problem, right?
Well, no,
Every time-
it isn't a problem. That's what's before the board tonight. That's the only thing that's before the board tonight. And respectfully, that's the only thing that the board can review tonight.
Right.
Unfortunately, we can't work within the bounds of what ifs.
We don't look at the future at all here. That's what it looks like to me. We're just looking at today
Correct.
instead of seeing how it's going to impact tomorrow. And that's the problem that we have, okay? And the other thing with the DM permits, okay? I've lived in that property for a long time, like I said. What the wetlands look like today don't look the same way when it rains, when it's downpours. Those wetlands change, okay? Not that I'm a wetland expert here, but you can look at the property back there and see where the wetlands are.
And that's one of the reasons why the state imposes a buffer zone, okay? It could be 50 feet, 100 feet, whatever the criteria is for that particular wetland area, okay, streams and so on. So there is a buffer zone with the anticipation that at some point you're gonna have a low level of water in there, and you're gonna have a high level of water in there at some point in time. So that's where the buffer zones come in. But that goes, to be honest with you, that goes beyond the purview of this board.
And I get that,
Yeah.
but I go back to my original question, and I don't think that's been answered. I know there's a lot of wetlands back there. My original question was, why can't this property be moved around so these houses are not so close to the neighbors that already been living there 20, 25, 30 years?
Yeah, well, because they're working within the area that they can build.
Or are they looking at it from the cheapest way possible out of this? I mean, has anyone here looked at maybe moving things away a little bit more, even though it may cost more? It may require something else. But is this something that you guys look at, or is it just whatever's presented to you is presented to you? And this gentleman is here today doing his job, obviously, and he wants a resolution today, okay? He wants a vote on this today. But I'm not sure if you've heard all the neighbors' issues out there, okay? And I think, this thing of not even looking at moving properties a little bit more so that the houses are being built somewhere else within their boundaries, why things can't be moved at all. That's the part that I don't get. We're already set in stone on this and not looking at any other options at all.
Excuse me, I think, and Mr. DeMarvo can tell us better, I think when the developer puts a plan together like this and sites the house on the lot, it's not precisely where the house is necessarily going to go, but where maybe it looks like it best fits the lot.
Right.
Perhaps you can work with the owner to see if they can move the home a little farther forward, but and actually, I don't think it would be more expensive. It might be less because it's going to be a shorter driveway. if they move it closer to the street. But maybe you can discuss that with the owner and Mr. Darbo and see if it's possible to move the homes a little further away from your property.
Well, shouldn't it be something that you guys should be asking? Can things be moved around a little bit? And, I mean, why do I need to get involved with the owner? I mean, isn't that what you guys are here for, or what are we here for?
Sir,
Let me ask that question.
sir, I would like to ask you, instead of being upset,
Yes.
okay, try to accept, because how would you like that somebody come to you and tell you what to do on your land, in your lot, in your house? Same thing. I mean, this
Ma'am,
guy
I'm not
wants the
upset.
land, he
Right.
wants the house there, it's his business, okay, or whatever.
Well,
He's
yeah, of
going
course
to
it's his
enjoy
business,
it.
but it's my business too. I've lived in
Yes.
that, I lived there for 25 years. I bought
Exactly,
there
exactly.
25 years ago. A new
Right.
person coming in, well, it's their lot, it's their business. I get that.
Yes.
All I'm asking here is, and I don't think I'm upset here, I understand that things build on. All I'm asking, has anyone looked at any other options where the house can be moved around somewhere else? Always.
I'm sure that the guy that drew the plan there, he looked and everything. He
Did he?
found the best place for it.
And that's what you're going with.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So this is a subdivision. It is not a land development project, so they didn't even have to cite the houses on the property.
Correct.
So there's something that's called a building envelope, which I think what you could do, if it's not on here, I haven't studied these plans, you could require that the building envelope be shown on the final plan. The house can be put anywhere in that building envelope. Also considering septic and well, and those things have to be far enough away from each other. But what this board is doing, if they approve this tonight, is they are providing for 2 lots with a certain area within those lots within which a house may be built. So the house that is cited on these plans is not necessarily going to be where it ends up. So if you want to talk to the owner about perhaps moving it, if they can, further away in the building envelope, you can do that. This board has no authority over that.
Excuse me if I may, just for purposes of
Mr.
the
Resnick,
record,
please, yes.
The plan does have building envelopes on. And while we would not be willing to agree to that as a condition to final, we certainly have no issues having discussions with the homeowner. And if it's possible, we can look into it. But there are site constraints, and Mr. Darbo designed these plans as well as that building envelope based on best practices, reviewing the regulations, reviewing writing regulations. I just want to say one thing, and I think, Mr. Chairman, you stated it very well, and so did the town solicitor. This board is constrained by the law, laws, regulations, and ordinances, and they can't act outside of that. And so what they're reviewing here is essentially whether or not we met these various rules, regulations, and statutes, and we've done that today. But there is always a recourse for property owners in a community in the state of Rhode Island that don't like the law. And I say this is a form of public participation. There's another form of public participation. There's advocating with your local constituents, the General Assembly, as well as your town council, perhaps for changes to state law or the ordinance. But that's not what this commission can do. This commission's charge is to review the law and apply it to the specific application that's before it, and we've done that. And so I would suggest to you, and I say this with all respect, if you don't like the way that the town's ordinance or state regulations work with respect to the development of property rights, you should get together with other property owners and you should advocate for yourself. The only way that that can happen is through a legislative process. It is not before a commission that is tethered to reviewing things by laws and regulations that are in place. That's it.
So I understand all that. My original question was still the same, it hasn't changed, okay? Which is, with all this property here, and my question was, can the house be built further away from the property lines of the existing homes? That's really my main question here.
Mr.
okay?
Chairman.
And has anybody ever looked at that? That's all I'm.
And respectfully,
Yeah.
we've answered that question. I really think that Mr. Ribeiro has put all of the comments, relevant comments on the record. We're not adding anything to this. You have a long night ahead of you. There's a building envelope. The applicant said that they're willing to talk with Mr. Ribeiro. And I mean, we've answered your question.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Bessick, is there anything else that you wanted to add, or? Okay.
Mr. Chair, there was a Ben. Ben, you had your hand raised for a while and you took it down. If you want to speak, you just raise it again and I can promote you to panelist. Okay, so I guess Ben is opting out and there's no one else with their hand raised.
Okay, and is there anyone else here in the audience that has any questions or concerns regarding this project? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Darbo.
Thank you.
Oops.
Jared Messier has his hand raised. Jared, just unmute yourself.
How you doing? Again, I just wanted to go on record that I am the owner of 109 Scott Road. I did purchase it September 2021 with the knowledge that there would be future development and also access of easement on my property. So I was aware of it and I am fine with it.
Thank you. Board have any other questions or comments? Mr. Butler.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to 113 Scott Road, Assessors Plat 39, Lot 13, I move to approve the preliminary plan based on the finding of facts in Mr. Monica's memo to the Planning Board of April 20th, 2022. And I further move that final plan be designated to the administrative officer.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Bush. Any other discussion? Mr. Bush, Mr. Butler, you did say include the memo.
Yes.
Including
Including Mr. Monica's memo of April.
And the findings
20th.
of facts.
And the findings of fact.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Yes, you did. Yes. All set? All in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to tell them to take a quick recess to bring
Go ahead. Oh, Mr. Chair, can we have a quick recess to bring more chairs in?
Certainly, please. The only thing is, we'll be taking a head count. Head count.
Okay.
Good?
Of the audience?
While capacity.
Oh.
Excuse me. The applicant, in connection with the next agenda item, be allowed to make a presentation before the matter is open to the public for comment. We've got 4 witnesses this evening and a lot of materials to go through, and I think that it would make things a little bit more efficient if we were allowed to go first with our presentation and then open ourselves up to questions.
It's up to the board, but
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I think you're referring to Blackstone Valley property.
That's correct, Mr. Bush.
I'm going to think out loud here. We, beginning at noontime on Monday, talking to the board now, got a number of documents from the applicant, and we got more documents yesterday. And we have the paper documents here this evening. Digitally, the documents that we received are in the neighborhood of 200 pages.
206.
It's not obviously possible, particularly for those on the board who work to review that material. So my thought is to ask for a continuance. I'm not making a motion yet. I'll let this gentleman, but I don't want to have personally a presentation that involves material for which we don't have written documentation. And it seems to me that given the interest in the public, Given the scope of the material, given the application's importance, that to bifurcate the discussion into two separate meetings over a period of a month doesn't strike me as the best way to handle this. I'm also wondering out loud if, given the interest, if we do vote to continue, that we consider a different venue to handle the people. Before I make a motion, I'll just ask other board members if, am I off the reservation here? Or?
Mr. Chairman, before we continue, my children are scholars at Blackstone Valley Prep, so on advice of the town solicitor, I'm going to continue to recuse myself on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. Bassett, just, my understanding, Ms. Salvatore, Mr. Stevens, I think you only had an opening.
No, we don't, I don't, do you have anything to say?
You're good?
No, we don't. Glenn has a couple of questions that I think will help the applicant with some of the materials that we received. We have questions on them, but we have nothing to add. There were some questions that were posed that I'm prepared to answer, but it's up to you.
I was going to say, it's something that Mr. Modica should talk about now, or just let Mr. Resident know.
Well, particularly if you are going to continue this matter, the materials that came in, we need some clarification on some of them. I mean, it's totally up to you, but there is a time clock. The applicant did agree to a continuance the last time of an additional 30 days. I think Mr. Modica has calculated that you have until June 30th to make a decision at this point. The applicant can always extend that time period by agreement. We have the peer reviewer, traffic engineer here tonight. It's up to you. I mean, if I were sitting in your shoes, I wouldn't have a problem with some presentation, but certainly I would agree with you that you want to digest the materials, especially if you either haven't gotten them yet or you've only gotten some of them. So perhaps you're not going to conclude tonight, but again, that decision is completely up to you.
Okay. I'm just wondering if what Mr. Modica has is something that he needs to bring forward at this point, or we can wait until afterwards and let the resident continue.
Well, I think it would be helpful to the applicant if Mr. Modica makes a couple of comments about the documents that we received. Some of the documents don't seem to be in the right place. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. Okay. So things that you have in your possession now that don't seem to, you know, there might be documents out of place and things like that.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. McDonald.
I think I understand what the solicitor is saying, and I would be in agreement if there are some points that have to be clarified so that there's no confusion for anybody if the meeting is continued until next month, to get those points of clarification ironed out now. My thought on a continuance is not to get into the substance of any further presentations, and then split it up somehow, because we're going to hear presentations, and then I'm going to look at this material, and there may be further questions, and which presupposes that all of the experts are going to have to come back anyway. This is not a negative comment, but with all due respect, this has been going on for months, and we get 200 pieces of paper in. And it is unreasonable to expect us to try to function tonight not having read any of this. There are people in the audience, I'm assuming they're parents of students, and maybe they want to have some things to say, and maybe they have letters here. But absent us being able to review this, it just seems to defy common sense.
Personally, okay, we know that our prime concern is traffic. okay? And correct? It's really wise with the
Uh,
traffic.
I will respectfully disagree. The core issue is student enrollment. Everything flags from traffic circulation, parking. That's my opinion.
Well, the reason why I posed that question is, we have a traffic engineer from the applicant here, we also have the traffic engineer who was our peer review. And I'm thinking it might be useful, okay, to have them make their presentations, okay? So that we can digest what they have to say, and may answer some questions that we have, and we may have more questions later. So I'm not, personally, this is for me, this is me, this is not the rest of the board, okay? That Mr. Kelly, when he was here last month, and we continued the meeting, that he had stated at that point in time that this coming month, meeting tonight, that the traffic engineers would be here to present their traffic reports. And I know there are other issues that regarding student enrollment and so on. But for me, the important thing is so that we can move the process along. If we hear from the engineers, at least we've got, because that's going to take up quite a bit of time anyway. And we don't have to we can make a decision later on at the end of the night if we wanted to either continue the meeting next month, so that we have an opportunity to digest 206 pages of data that I received on Monday afternoon. And I just had given it a cursory overview and didn't look at it in detail that I would like to do.
Mr. Chairman.
But I would like to try to move this.
I will withdraw even the thought of asking for a continuance.
Well, I agree with Mr. McDonald. I'm not ready to vote on this tonight. I've got 200 and something pages of things to review, and I'm not going to vote on it tonight. I think we need a continuance. Whether or not we hear from people tonight is up to the board, and we can vote on that.
Yeah.
But if the traffic engineers present tonight, and then we go through the 200 pages, and we have more questions for the traffic engineers, they're coming back anyway. But I don't believe I'm ready to vote on this tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would ask the attorneys for the applicant whether they would agree to bring back their experts at the next meeting, so we don't run, I mean, that's really important. If they review some of this material that you've submitted, they certainly should have the right to ask questions on that material. Do you agree to bring back all the traffic experts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll absolutely bring back any of the experts that present testimony this evening. And I just want to put on the record that, yes, there's voluminous materials that have been presented to this board. And that's a result of a process in trying to obviate the concerns that have been raised by VHB from staff memorandum, members of the community, and members of this board. I have here this evening my plan is to present testimony from 4 individuals this evening. Mr. Shevlin from PAR, who's our principal traffic engineer, also Michael DiMatteo, the chief operating officer for BVP, as well as the high school principal, Josh Falk, and it was our intent to end with our land use planner, Doug McLean. I understand from hearing the comments of the board that there's not an appetite to take a vote this evening on this project based on the materials that have been received. But I can tell you, as this board is aware, this is a protracted process. This has been a very long process. In fact, the first pre-application hearing on this was October 18th, 2021. And I would like to just go through you very briefly the track of the dates of the review of this project in a moment. But what I want to say is I think it's appropriate this evening for us at the very least to put on Mr. Shelton. You have your peer reviewer here this evening. PAR has put together a fantastic presentation based on a lot of due diligence that's been done since the last time we were here, by way of obtaining data, videos, photographs, drone videos. We have a lot of members from the community here, and I think the best way to go forward would be to present that information to the commission, to the community, with an understanding that we will in fact bring back our experts and we will open ourselves up to questions. And might I suggest that in the interim, as this commission reviews the documents that were provided, if there are specific questions that this commission has and they're forwarded to your planner and your attorney, we will address those line by line in connection with a continued hearing date. And we would also ask if that would be the appetite of the board to listen to some testimony this evening based on the community outshowing that we have and based on the fact that the town has their peer reviewer and Mr. Shevlin here, I would request that the commission consider a special meeting to follow up with this so that Mr. Bush's concern about it being fractured in presentation could be obviated by trying to put these meetings very, very close together. But I think I'd like to side on presentation tonight. Perhaps we could make an agreement that we won't go on to our planner this evening, and perhaps we could save some of the testimony relative to the school's representatives, the principal, the COO. But I think it's very important this evening to allow Mr. Shevlin to give his presentation, because while there may be a lot of issues that this commission has concerns about, the primary focus of the staff memorandum and the primary focus of the comments that were raised at the last hearing, and I wasn't here but had the opportunity to review it, are traffic-based. And I agree that it's certainly tethered to student enrollment, but we've done a lot of work to put together a revised plan that demonstrates to this commission that not only is the student enrollment and the expansion of this school going to maintain the status quo, we are going to make a development with respect to traffic, both internal and external, that betters this situation. So I would request that we be allowed to put Mr. Shevlin on, that this commission can have ample time to review the materials that were provided, and we would request a special day where I represent and we'll bring back everyone to answer any questions. I just think that we have some we've got some momentum. We're all here this evening, and we'd like to answer some questions. We'd like to get some information in front of this commission. And I don't think it would be a detriment to listen and ask questions without the benefit of reviewing everything. You'll have your opportunity, and we'll present everybody again to answer any questions. And as far as the receipt of voluminous communications, we did the very best we could to put together what we felt was appropriate for this commission to review, and we sent it on Friday, and I understand that it's a lot of information, whether it was this morning or Monday or Friday, it's a lot of information, but I would respectfully ask that we be able to go forward with this evening, at least with Mr. Shevlin's testimony.
Mr. President, before Mr. Bush, I'm not suggesting that we make a decision tonight. I want to make that really clear. And looking at the hour right now, I'm pretty confident that we won't be able to make take a vote tonight, because we have a curfew, okay, and that is at 10:30. There's no doubt in my mind that we're going to have to go to another meeting. So I'm not saying that I don't even think we're going to get through and get to a point where we could make a decision and have a vote tonight. I want to make that really clear. Okay.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to interject one final thing, Mr. Chairman. With respect to the comments that were just raised by the solicitor and the planner about some clarifications to the documents, I have no idea what they are.
Neither do I.
And so I think it would be a benefit to everyone for us to understand what those are, and we can revise them, clarify, do whatever we will in connection with that next meeting. But that doesn't detract from the fact that we've got the community out tonight, we have our experts. Let's listen to some testimony and move the review of this project along, because as I said, the pre-app is October 18th, 2021. So we've had the master plan application was filed on October 26, 2021. A TRC meeting was held on November 2nd. As a result of that meeting, we got a letter of incompleteness from your staff on November 5th. As a result, PAR submitted the original traffic study on January 14th. That led to another letter of incompleteness on January 25th. As a result, PAR submitted an addendum and a revised portion of their traffic study on January 28th. Yet again, on February 2nd, a letter of incompleteness was issued. This resulted in another submission and another addendum by PAR on February 23rd. Based on that submission on February 23rd, we were finally deemed complete as of March 2nd, 2022. So based on that track record, with a pre-app meeting occurring back in October 2021, I think we owe it to the public to have a hearing this evening.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one comment. I'm very well aware of the chronology and when everything started, the ball started rolling. But this board didn't get to see any master plan until last month. So that's where we're operating under, okay? Everything that else, the board is, and I am also aware of the chronology and when things got started, okay? Ms. Reese, you had a...
Yes, I just have a little question, maybe a comment for you, and that is about the documents. You made a statement that the documents will send to the town on Friday?
Yes, they were sent to
Okay,
your
so
plan. Yep.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is a holiday, is a non-working day. So we're talking
Not for
about...
me, but I understand.
Well, for most of you, including us. For me, it's a holiday every day, anyway, because I don't work, I'm retired. But how do you expect the members that are working members to review all that material in detail in 2 days and be ready to really give you every question, every detail, every purpose that we need to make a decision? Now, this project is very close to my heart. I live in the valley. I walk through your schools 3 or 4 times a week, and I know exactly what the issues are outside, not inside, but outside, besides the traffic. So give us a chance to review, study, read, and later make a decision. Listening and getting more information today, for me, is fine, because if I have more questions, you'll get more questions next time. The more information I have today, the more questions I can present the next time. Traffic, for me, today would be great, because I haven't seen a traffic report that made sense to me on the 10 years or 14 years that I've been on this board. But so that's one of the things that I'm really interested in.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you that the content that was delivered to you, the reason why it was so voluminous, it was a reaction to an extremely robust staff report, as well as an extremely robust review by VHB. So in reality, at a master plan stage, as you know, which is conceptual, it is fairly unorthodox that you would be getting the types of materials that you're getting at this stage in connection with the traffic study. So the reason why it's so voluminous is because we were trying to speak to all of the things that we heard. I did not expect these.
You had 1 month, and Friday was 5 days away from today.
I can tell you that we worked very, very diligently to get these materials to you. I can also tell you that no one from my team nor I requested that you take a vote this evening.
Okay.
So this is not an attempt. This is not an attempt of ambush or to get you information. Right. It's we got you what we could as quick as we could, and we're here to present tonight, and we'll be back.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I just want to correct one thing because, and I'm not sure why the timeline is so important. As you said, one of you just said, you just got master plan recently. I believe at the beginning of the applicant presenting to the planning department, the expectation was that master plan would be heard in November, late November. They were not ready to present master plan in late November. So the planning department offered a pre-app with you on November 23rd. That's when the pre-app was. And then, of course, it took a couple of months for them to get their certificate of completeness for the master plan. I don't know why it's that important, but because Mr. Resnick told you about that chronology, I just want to make sure that you understand the actual timeline. Thank you.
And the point of the chronology was just to say that, given that there's a public meeting right now, we have such outstanding, so many people have come out, I just think it would be appropriate to let us at least give testimony on what we understand to be the major issue. And I think this commission would be aided in the benefit of Mr. Shevlin's testimony when reviewing these materials. In fact, I think that in viewing the materials in isolation, without the benefit of his testimony, it might not be as productive.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleagues about the amount of material being sent at a late date. I mean, that's not fair to this particular body because, let's face it, we're basically volunteers here. And we don't spend this kind of time on this type of material very often, and you're right, it is unique. However, I do agree that it would be good to hear Mr. Shevlin, but I also would like to put a stipulation to that that's all we hear from tonight is Mr. Shevlin, because if the extent of that presentation is going to be lengthy, you're going to lose people, and I just want to be able to absorb that if that's the case. VHB could, if they can get in on within the time frame, that's fine, but that's my recommendation. But I don't want the whole audience starting to provide testimony at this point. I think just his would be enough at this stage so that we can absorb what we need to, because it is a major issue.
And we would have no objection to that stipulation. And looking at the hour and understanding the expanse of Mr. Shevlin's testimony, I think it would be perfect for this evening to focus in on that. And then we can prepare, and this commission can prepare for our other experts. And as I said, as we did this time, and you will see in your packet, and if you haven't had a chance to review it yet, that PAR went line by line through VHB's report. We really tried to address everything that came up from your commission members last meeting, as well as in the VHB review. So with that stipulation, I would love to get started, if it pleases the chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Scott, relative, if we can get it in, I'd like to hear from both Mr. Shevlin and our peer reviewer, if we can do it.
That's what the ideal.
Okay.
And I would just mention to the board, obviously the town has the right and obligation to hire a peer reviewer to take a look at PARs. My client is paying for that peer review, and that peer review is here this evening. And so for that reason, I would ask that we be allowed to present.
I'm well aware.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to hear the presentations tonight, yes. And that would make more sense there when I read the material, they compare with what they say and what the material we say.
I'm fine with that too.
Mr. Chairman, just one last thing.
Yes.
I do think it would be helpful if Mr. Modica just goes through, I think it's only 2 or 3 things that need clarification, because as Mr. Shevlin is presenting, there might be documents that you have or that you don't have that they think you have. So I would just start out with those minor issues that I think will help everybody.
No objection at all, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Modica.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm going to be brief. I can share my screen. Response to questions. Oh, just give me a sec. Okay, so I'm starting with the April 22 letter from KSP, comments and responses to issues raised by the board. And this is really a lot of housekeeping stuff. On page 1, they reference new plans attached as Exhibit A. So I just want to confirm what is new. I mean, the parking plan is slightly revised. People are parking in different places. We have a morning arrival plan. We don't have afternoon plan. So I don't know if that was changed or was supposed to be changed. And then we go to page 3. Where are we here? Page 3, Exhibit A. So it says, in addition, there's overflow parking available at a lot owned by the school. See Exhibit A. And Exhibit A is this. There's no showing the satellite lot. And it's a lot of this. It appears that there's figures that are misplaced and are not referenced correctly. Page 3 references Exhibit C. There will be 6 traffic monitoring staff located as shown on the plan CC. And C shows existing morning and existing afternoon, and I think their intention is to show proposed. And when they say 6, I believe the latest plan I saw showed 8 monitors. In terms of staggering, on page 2, in regard to staggering, they say students arriving in the morning. We do not believe that's necessary. Page 3, it says the student's dismissal will be staggered. So, and then there's another reference in their other document, responses to questions on page 7, which this seems to intimate that there won't be staggering. So if there's some clarification on staggering, yes or no, or when it's going to happen, that would be helpful. The last page here, let's get here. Last page of that April 22 shows a map of BVP properties and parking locations. And I just want to talk about real quick the Cadillac lot and the Meeting Street lot down here. The Cadillac lot, they say, is at 1 Titus Street. It's not. 1 Titus Street is a parcel that's owned by Cadillac Mills, but it's used for storage. The parking lots are actually 12 McCondry Street, Plat 2, Lot 7, and the northern portion of 10 McCondry Street, Plat 2, Lot 222. This document also says that BVP owns the Cadillac Mills lot, and it's my understanding that BVP leases the Cadillac lot, and they also lease the parking lot on Meeting Street. So if the applicant can clarify that and explain, especially in terms of long-term, how parking can be guaranteed in the event one or both of these leases aren't renewed. Page 2 references a parking lot across from McCondry Avenue with queuing for 24 cars. The last plan I saw showed 17 cars queuing in the McCondry Street lot, so I'm not sure. And Exhibit A, again, I believe it refers to this, and it's not showing what's stated in the text. Again, page 3 references Exhibit C with references to monitors, and it's showing the existing pickup and drop-off. So that's the one final thing at the last planning board meeting. I just want to mention Josh Falk mentioned he's out there on Jones Street monitoring drop-off and pickup, and there are other monitors out there. And I believe the applicant might show some videos of what the current scenario is. So I just want to note that a monitor or monitors have been out there just since the end of March, just right before the planning board meeting. I haven't observed anyone before monitoring drop-off or pickup prior to March. So just want to let you know it's only been the last few weeks that BVP has been trying to monitor pickup and drop-off. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Monica. And just one other clarification, okay? We are a planning board, not a planning commission.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, sometimes it blurs together.
Certainly.
I've had a couple late nights the past couple weeks,
Right.
so I apologize for that.
There
And I'll
are
refer
some-
you as a board.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm stuck in Jamestown right now. Apologies.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. There are other communities that use a commission, but so that we can be accurate.
Absolutely.
Planning board.
Excuse me for that.
I just wanted to point out to the gentleman, that I'm Mr. McDonald. I'm Mr. McDonald. That's Mr. Bush. And I don't know why you confuse us. He's much better looking than I am.
Well, I probably should put my glasses on. Thank you for that correction.
All right.
It's because the last time we met, it was all on Zoom, and now that we're, back in person, I gotta make sure all my senses are working appropriately. Mr. Monica, thank you very much for bringing up those clarifications. Obviously, some of them are geared towards the testimony that's going to be provided tonight. I feel pretty comfortable that Mr. Shevlin will be able to clarify on the record any of those items that are germane to his presentation. With respect to the other items you brought up, because we know we're going to have another hearing, we will submit a document to you with respect to making all those clarifications and make sure the record is very tight. I appreciate you bringing them to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
We're ready to hear from Mr. Shevlin.
And before I call Mr. Shevlin, I would just like to ask that this board remember that when reviewing this project, that you have to review it through the prism of a master plan application. And I know that you've been presented with master plans before, but I just want to read to you what a master plan review is pursuant to your regulations as well as state law. Master plan, overall plan for a proposed project site outlining general rather than detailed development intentions. It describes the basic parameter of a major development proposal rather than give full engineering detail. So the reason why I bring that up this evening, and I think is even recognized by some of the members of this board, it is unorthodox for a board within this state to be presented with the traffic study of this detail at this juncture. And so while we're providing this information because we know it's a major concern of the town and we want to get out in front of it and we want to address the concerns relative to the review process, that doesn't mean that your review of these materials is buying through what your review would be for a preliminary application. We're giving you more information. It's being gratuitously provided. In fact, in my short career, I have never seen a traffic study done of this nature, nor a peer review done of a traffic study at a master plan. We've done it, we've agreed to it, and we're here to present. But please remember that the PRISM is a master plan, and there are conditions that can be added to what we're presenting to you at preliminary. And we can discuss those, and we can discuss those at the next meeting. But it's very important to remember, this is not a preliminary review of this project.
I think last month, Mr. Kelly made the same assertion about, and I'm very much aware of the fact that this is a master plan and not a preliminary, but I believe that Mr. Stevens and Mr. Modica felt that, and I think they relayed that to the applicant, that the prime thing that is of concern is the traffic. And if, again, like you say, if we can get ahead of it. So, yeah, typically, I can't recall at any time that when we ever did require a traffic plan, that master plan, although there have been times when an applicant had submitted it, just as, they felt that it would be a good idea to do. In this case, because we know that the traffic is the most important thing, and like you said, we want to get ahead of it. So I recognize that it's not usual, it's quite unusual to deal with a traffic plan in traffic analysis at master plan. That's a given, that's recognized. And with that, we're ready to go.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Alvarado.
again, just a correction for the record. Mr. Resnick brought up what gets submitted at master plan. The requirement, I'm reading right from the statute, the requirements for master plan and supporting material for this phase of review should include, but is not limited to, information on the natural and built features of the surrounding neighborhood, existing natural and man-made conditions of the development site, including topographic features, the freshwater wetland and coastal zone boundaries, floodplains, as well as the proposed design concept, proposed public improvements and dedications, tentative construction phasing, and potential neighborhood impacts. And I would highlight potential neighborhood impacts. Both the applicant and the town agreed during technical review that traffic was going to be very important. That's why the agreement was made. to submit that at this stage of review. And frankly, Mr. Kelly brought up the fact that at a recent meeting in Smithfield that where he represented a 1.1 million square foot warehouse, he talked about a traffic submission. So I did look at that. That was submitted not very long ago at master plan stage, and there was a peer review associated with that. So it is not that unusual. I think in the last several years, you haven't seen as many developments because development wasn't happening for many years. You remember the tolling period. But as developments, are being submitted much more now, you're going to see more, and you're going to see traffic studies. But I just wanted to make it clear, because I think they're trying to make the argument that you can't somehow look at traffic, and I completely disagree with that. It is a potential neighborhood impact, and it is part of the statute. And Mr. Kelly's office has very recently, this year, submitted a master plan in another town with a traffic study and a peer review.
Which was conceptual in nature and not even close to what has been done in this project by PAR in connection with this application. So yes, I never said that a town is not entitled to look at traffic. What I said is that a traffic study of this nature at this stage is unorthodox. The application that you're referencing in the town of Smithfield and the report that was done by Beta, Paul Bannon, totally conceptual in nature, not even close to the comprehensive nature and what has occurred here. And the horse is out of the barn. We agree to it. I'm just saying this. When they review these materials, when this commission reviews these materials, when this board reviews these materials, their findings of fact are based on master plan review. They are not based on preliminary plan review. And that's the only point that I was trying to make, and it's a very key distinction. With that, could I please go forward presenting my witness?
I wish you would.
Thank you. Mr. Shevlin. While I know that the members of the board are familiar with Mr. Shevlin.
Yes, we are.
Mr. Shevlin, if you could please state for the board your education and your work experience, as well as your testimony that you've provided in municipal boards throughout the state of Rhode Island.
Absolutely. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is John Shevlin. I've been employed by Park Corporation of Lincoln for over 32 years. I've been performing traffic-related work for my entire career through my employment. My background includes a civil engineering degree from the University of Massachusetts. I've also taken, I've also taken traffic-related courses at Georgia Tech University and also down at the University of Rhode Island. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Rhode Island and have presented in front of many boards, pretty much most boards throughout the state of Rhode Island, whether it be planning boards, zoning boards, or councils. So, including this board, the town of Cumberland. So,
Before I completely get out of the way, Mr. Chairman, based on that testimony, I would ask that the chair, as well as this board, accept Mr. Shevlin's testimony tonight as an expert in his area of expertise, that of the traffic engineer.
Certainly. Welcome back, Mr. Shelvin. Long time no see.
Long time no see. Isabel, you're in my seat. Yeah, so I'm here tonight. I know you received a lot of documentation. A lot of the documentation was signed by one of our traffic engineers, Tim Thompson. I'm sitting in for Tim tonight. Tim's actually had a planned vacation. He's on a baby moon, or a baby moon, I guess it is, similar to a honeymoon, but he has a baby coming up, so they took a vacation beforehand. So I'm here before you tonight in regards to presenting what's been provided to you. I have thoroughly reviewed all the documents that have been going back and forth since October. I'm very familiar with the project area. I've been involved with Blackstone Valley Prep on other projects. I've been involved with a lot of different types of projects in the area. So PAR has been requested to go ahead and perform the traffic impact study related to this proposed expansion.
and that was submitted to the town for master plan review. Through our study phase and from our history, we're very familiar with this property. We were involved in the original high school, so we've been involved in the area quite a bit. As you all know, our project site is at the existing high school property located off of McCoundry Street between Maple Street to the north and Jones Street to the south. In addition to the location of the school, there's also a parking lot on the west side of McCoundry Street, which is for staff parking. And further west of that is the soccer field. The existing school accommodates 400 students and they're looking to go ahead and expand to 550 with this expansion. Our study area was performed in accordance with industry standards for traffic engineering studies. And we went ahead and we looked at the surrounding roadway network as far as looking at traffic safety, traffic capacity, and we also looked at the operations of the area. So I'm here to present all those facts tonight. This is the study area that we have. We have gone and looked at the roadway network for Broad Street, which extends from John Street in Cumberland up to High Street in Central Falls. We've also reviewed the local roadways surrounding the school, including McCoundry Street, Jones Street, and Maple Street. Along the Broad Street corridor, the study includes the analysis of several intersections. We had 2 signalized intersections, one at Broad Street with John Street, Church Street, and the CVS driveway, and also a signalized intersection of Broad Street and High Street in Central Falls. We've also reviewed 3 unsignalized intersections, and those include Broad Street with Maple Street, Broad Street and Jones Street, and then Broad Street with Mill Street. As part of our analysis, we took into account traffic conditions for 3 different time periods. We looked at the existing conditions, which were counts that were current from 2021. And then we also looked at future no build, which looks out 5 years and takes into account background growth and also other developments. And then we looked at the future build. In addition to the traffic capacity and safety of the roadways, the study also includes review of the existing proposed pickup and drop-off operations at the school and the changes to be implemented to the parking and traffic circulation and those impacts of the surrounding streets. So as part of our study, we started off with an extensive amount of traffic data collection. Traffic volume counts were performed in December 2021 through turning movement counts at the study intersections I previously mentioned. Those were done during the morning and afternoon peak hours. So we did those from 7 to 9 in the morning, and then also in the afternoon from 2 to 6 p.m. We use those times because we want to take into account the commuter peak traffic and also the peak traffic that's being generated from the schools. So we encompassed all the school traffic and the commuter peak traffic in those volume data. The counts were complete, as you know, during COVID with the pandemic going on. A lot of the studies that we have performed recently, we take that into account in regards to how COVID has affected traffic. For this site, there is a traffic count station over the line in Central Falls at Broad Street and Chestnut Street. So we're able to gather traffic count data from that count station from 2017 and 2018, and we compare those to the December 21 volumes. Based on the number of vehicles that count station has, the volumes are actually a little bit higher from what we counted versus what was on those count stations pre-pandemic, which makes sense when you think about it, because you are getting, in this area where the schools are, probably more traffic due to the fact that you have less kids on the bus. So you do have more parents bringing kids back and forth to school, so it does affect those volumes. So we went ahead, we looked at that. Like I said, typically we have found areas where we have to increase the traffic 5%, 10%, but because these volumes are so closely related, we did not inflate those at all. At the same time, the volumes that we had, they could be on the high side as well, because there are more cars going to the school and not on the bus. So we also took that, so we feel like our analysis for that purpose is very conservative. So based on the counts that we did, as I mentioned before, we looked at 3 peak conditions. The AM peak hour, looking at the volumes that are out there and what we counted were from 7 to 8 a.m. And we also analyzed the PM school peak hour, which was from 2 to 3 p.m. I'm sorry, I said PM, 7 to 8 a.m. Now the PM peak school hour, which was 2 to 3 p.m. The PM commuter peak hour varied from 2:45 to 5 at the different intersections. Again, we made our study very conservative. We took the worst case at each intersection and analyzed those so we can go ahead and see what occurs on those worst times at those certain locations. In addition to the traffic data and traffic analysis, we also did a safety analysis. With the safety analysis, we took into several factors in regards to what the safety conditions are in that area. And so what we did is we obtained crash data from the Cumberland Police Department over the last 3 years. So we get an understanding if there's a history in the area of any crash patterns. So we obtained that to analyze that. We took a look at the physical characteristics of the roadway as far as the geometries, as far as sight lines and such. And then we also took a look in regards to roadside obstructions, and we did measure speeds and sight distance. So upon receiving the crash data, we did review it to see if there was patterns, and we took a look in the area, and none of the areas seemed to have a high level of crashes, except for the Mill Street intersection that, compared to other intersections, did have a higher number. Over the 3-year period there was approximately 30 crashes. And we think there's a couple of reasons. I think the sight lines as you're pulling out of Mill Street are somewhat obstructed as you look to the left. And also the volumes are high along Broad Street, and with the queuing from that, because of the delays, some people get anxious and try to pull out in gaps that they don't have. We looked at those crashes. We also looked at the volumes at that intersection, and based on looking at that, we recommend and feel that a traffic signal should be warranted at that area. And as part of our study, and as this project moves forward, we'd like to go ahead and work with DOT and go ahead and talk to them about that possibility of implementing a traffic signal at that area. So for the traffic capacity, going back, in addition to analyzing the existing conditions, as I mentioned before, we looked at the future no-build conditions. And the existing traffic volumes, what that means, were expanded out 5 years. We took a look in regards to what the growth rate is in the area, and we obtained that from using the US Census data. Town of Cumberland has had a growth rate of 0.83% per year. We again apply a conservative number, and we applied a 1.0% annual growth. We just rounded that up for that purpose. So it does make that a little bit on the conservative side. In addition, we coordinate with the planning department to see if there's other developments in the area that we should include in our study. And they have identified 3 projects that are in the process of development. I don't believe they've been submitted to the town yet for master plan approval, but we were made aware in regards to the Ann and Hope proposed development that may be occurring, which is 220 units. We also took into account the Nashon Mills, 90 units, and the St. Patrick's Church, 36 units. So we did use those numbers as part of our analysis, determine what those trips are going to be, and we include those into the volumes for the future no build. So after we looked at the future no build, the next thing we do is we look at the future build condition, and that is basically the no build volumes, and then what's going to happen 5 years from now when you go ahead and you take the traffic from this proposed development, and how do they compare? We used a couple of different methodologies. We took a look in regards to information that we received from Blackstone Valley Prep as far as students, faculty, and what those volumes may be. And we took a look in regards to, we collected data as far as the number of parent drop-off and pickup at the existing school. And then we developed what the trip generations could be based on the 400 students versus the 550 students to determine what that trip generation will be based on that expansion. We also took a look at the ITE trip generation manual. And in that manual, there's no information that does exist for this type of use. It does have uses for charter schools that are from K to 12, which those numbers aren't going to match this. There's also private schools and high schools. So we went ahead with the highest number as far as what the volume is going to be for the ITE, and we went ahead and we applied that to the future no build, again, to get a number that's going to be on the conservative side. So once those numbers, and based on our analysis, we analyzed that using the Synchro software program, and with the analysis being conservative in the fact that we took a look in regards to all the traffic going to Maple Street. Based on our observations, the traffic does flow within that grid network on some of those side streets. It does split up, but we looked at that as a concern in regards to what's going to happen at that intersection. The results of our analysis showed for the signalized intersections, there's really no impact at all as far as the level of service or delay. You know, this is a relatively small expansion what you have and the number of students that we have in there and the way they operate as far as arrivals and dismissals. It didn't have a significant impact into the level of service. We did look at in regards to if there's ways to make traffic flow along the corridor better. And we did go ahead and do some analysis for the Broad Street at Church Street intersection. And that's something that we looked at as far as if you modify some of those times, you can improve the traffic signal times in that area. And that's something that we've talked to VHB about. And that's something we go ahead and be presented to the Rhode Island Department of Transportation as well. So so the traffic study that we did that looked more or less on the off-site roadway components, you know, I feel comfortable in regards to saying that this development should have little or no impact to the traffic capacity in the area with this expansion, and also as far as the safety, we don't see any reason why this would create this area to be any less safe. So I want to go over and spend some time now in regards to a lot of the issues that have come up, and that's with regards to the operations in the vicinity of the school and the surrounding roadway network. So up on the screen right now is we're showing you in regards to what we observed for the existing morning drop-off circulation operations. And I think others have been out there and seen this. So there are right now currently 2 parking lots that are being used by the staff. There's one on the south side adjacent to Jones Street. It's a small lot. It has enough spaces in there for 7 vehicles. And then there's also the other staff parking lot that's across on the west side of McCondry Street, which is also for staff parking. Also on that side, there is parking that's supplied, and that's in I call it the dark green, that's used for student parking. Currently with the existing, there's 20 parking passes that are allowed for 20 students, and that parking accommodates those users. We also have shown on this plan in regards to where the staff members are when the morning arrival comes as far as allowing, and I think it's been providing a testimony. There are other monitors that are along the roadways. I know when I went out there a couple of times, and the monitors, when I went to pull over just to go ahead and see, they're very abrupt as far as telling me to move on. They are not allowing cars to sit in the roadway along that area. So that was along Jones Street anyways. So this condition is for where people are parking right now, and that's with the 400 students. You know, we counted the morning arrivals of being 194 parent drop-offs. During the course of the morning, as they would come in sporadically, you have 5 buses that dropped off students that went to the bus drop-off area on the east side of McCondry Street. And then also, as we said, the faculty and staff, there's 56 that are occurring right now. And based on our observations, they are all in place before any of the buses, any of the students come into play. So they are already in place in school as the students come in. And then, as I mentioned before, there's going to be 20 student drivers that will have permits in order to go ahead and that have permits to go ahead and park on site. So I just want to show a video of what we have observed. And, you know, I think this shows a lot in regards to what's going on out there. I got to be honest with you, when I first got involved in this project and talking to Tim, you know, I asked him in regards to what's the major issue, and he said, you know, really, there's not a lot of major issues going on right now. He said, I go out there and I don't see it, but, you know, we just want to show you the video in regards to how it flows. And you can see this is, you know, we started doing this at 7:17, and we stopped about a little before 7:40. And you can see the parking over on Jones Street, the seven spots there, and how they flow. You know, as the buses arrive, they come in and they drop off and they leave in that area. But you can see already the parking is in place for the faculty. They're already in place at, you know, 7:17, 7:18. Then we can roll through this. Like I said, we do have this. Just want to be straight out. It's double time because we went normal time. It's going to go slow. So we did speed it up a little bit just for the purpose of letting it move. But we just want to show in regards to how the flow does occur in the morning, you know, especially on McCondry Street. There's free flow in that area. You don't see any major issues. You see it coming up on Jones Street. You know, the cars that are getting dropped off, they do go into that parking lot and they exit right away. The typical drop-off period for a student, from what we timed, was between 7 and 10 seconds. So it's very efficient as far as students being dropped off and then cars pulling out of there and then heading either up Jones Street to McContry and then down Maple, or they do go across to Winter Street. And one thing that I want to point up as we go further into this detail, and this is something that you're seeing, you are seeing more cars that are coming in the morning, as we said before, with COVID-19 right now. There is a drastic increase in regards to parents dropping students off with obvious reasons regards to why they're doing that. I mean, you're seeing that with, RIPTA, other school agencies. I think any school you go by, the town of Cumberland, I drive by the Lincoln High School every day. The traffic volumes there are certainly worse during the pandemic. In addition, what comes into play on this site is there's ongoing construction that's going on in Broad Street. You don't see it right now, but in a few minutes, they did close the Broad Street, and you'll see a lot of traffic that's going to come up Jones, go over to Winter. Even with that increased volume that you see coming down the roadway, you're going to see that it really did not impact at all as far as how the cars came into our site, as far as dropping off the students and be able to pull out pretty easily. Should put music to this. All right. It was quicker in the office.
Can I ask a question while we're waiting?
Sure.
How did you determine the time to do it? How can you stop, I guess, because the bell rings at 7:40? You didn't keep it going?
Correct. The bell rings at 7:40. We went ahead and we picked a time based on when we knew when the arrivals were coming. So that's why we got there earlier. And like I said, at this time, pretty much all the traffic was in, so that's why we brought it until school started.
I have a question. May I ask a question?
Yes.
Was this planned surveillance for traffic? Did they know we were going to be doing that day?
They being,
The school? Yes.
they knew we were going to go out there to go ahead and get videos, but
Because your video is very different than my pictures.
okay.
That's
Yeah, I mean, there was just,
why they had to-
no, and that's a good question, but it was just a matter of how can we show this, and we felt the best way to show it is through a drone video. There was nothing so-called planned, but we wanted to get this in here, obviously, so we could present at this time. And, I'll be the first one to admit, it's not perfect what goes on out there. Every now and then you do see some of the comments that have been made as far as cars making U-turns. Or for example, I think that car right there was maybe the one car in the 20-minute period that just seemed to stop right there to let somebody out. But it's very infrequent. And I think with this, the speeds that are out there, it was an unsafe condition, but there were some folks that just went ahead, instead of pulling over to the curb, they stopped and let people out. So we didn't notice there some things that could be better, but the bottom line, I think when we get into what we're proposing, as far as getting cars off the street with the parking,
It's
going to
interesting
be an
because
improvement.
there's no cars parked in front of the school in there. And usually you find cars parked in front of the school. I can tell you today, there were about 7 cars parked in front of the school, across from the buses. I was there. I visit this site about every day. That's my walking. That gentleman was at the door today. So I do see it.
No,
But I'm interested, so I don't want to.
No. And we are, I mean, as you watch the video, you'll see cars do pull up and drop. There's no doubt about that they do come and they drop people off on McContry. I think you'll see in the afternoon, you'll see cars that are parked along there waiting to go ahead and pick up. But I think as far as the drop off comes, what we're trying to show, if you saw it flow evenly, you'll see cars stop there. But then they'll go ahead and they'll drop them off quick and they pull out during the morning. So that's what that is. I mean, we can go ahead and share that. I believe there's no issue with that. If you folks want to go ahead and review it on your computers, where it won't be so choppy. I think as Dave mentioned, it's just slow because of the connection right now. So you could get a better view if we go ahead and we send you the link, if you would like. So similarly, the existing afternoon, the same type of deal. We went out there to take a look in regards to how the operations work. And there is, as you mentioned, Ms. Reese, the cars do arrive, 15, 20 minutes before dismissal. They do park along McCondray Street. And also there is cars that, were noticed that park along the streets of the side streets. We went ahead during our survey, we went ahead, we counted 40 cars that were parked on the streets. I believe VHB went out and did a count too, and I believe I may have the numbers reversed, but I think they had 41 cars that were parked on the street during the pickup time, initially waiting for people to come. So our numbers didn't match in regards to how many are out there waiting. But similarly, the buses do have the same pickup area. The buses do come early. They do park and wait until the school dismissal. There is 5 buses there. Comments have been made as far as that last bus going ahead and butting out into the roadway a little bit, affecting the circulation, which is so noted. We are looking to go ahead and improve that as far as proposed recommendation. When you look on the opposite side of McCondray Street, we are showing cars parked along that, the west side of that. So that's definitely shown. And currently there were cars parked on Jones Street on the south side of the building. And then the other area we're showing now is that small parking lot is also an area for pickup. And then over on Maple Street, there's also cars that we noticed that were parked on the south side of the road, and there was some on the north side. The area that we noticed on the north side was the areas where there was no sidewalk, but could be a sidewalk area, but it's an area where the pavement's about 42 feet wide. So we did notice that. And we went ahead again, this is for 400 students. In the afternoon, there's certainly less pickups than you have in the morning because of after school events, sports, or whatever it may be. So we had 86 pickups in the afternoon. And the same thing as far as what we found as being the maximum number of parents waiting were 41 vehicles. So I'm just looking down, we have 41, VHB have 40, so I don't want to misspeak. But we have another video for that, if we can run through that somewhat quickly. So as you can see, all the buses have come and they are stacked there. You can see them beginning to stack along the west side of McCondray Street. And this particular day that we were out there, we didn't see them blocking the crosswalk, but as far as proposed improvements, that will be addressed. You do see the cars we discussed in regards to over on Maple Street, queuing there. I know one of the days that I went out there, a lot of those vehicles around that side were members of the baseball team, like that in an away game. So I think they're taking their equipment out of school and loading up in that area. But the vehicles do go there. The first one that we found that arrived was about 20 minutes before school got out, but it was one car that was there that was probably there for 20 minutes. The next ones that came were about 4 or 5 minutes later, and they sporadically came in. There wasn't, they weren't all out there for 20, 25 minutes. You had one that came, then a couple more. So at the end of the time on McCondray Street that it was lined up, there's probably about 15 to 18 vehicles that are parked along that side. But again, I just want to show in regards to the same thing on Jones Street. If you take a look in regards to that driveway as far as the pickup, again, there was really no queuing that went on there. The students that were picked up in that area was very efficient as far as how students were able to come in. They were loaded up and they pulled out onto the roadway network. Yes.
You don't have a picture of Jones and Broad where you can see cars coming in.
Yeah, it's up in the upper.
I know it's an update, but it doesn't, obviously you can't see it very well. When I was out there the other day, there was a queue all along Jones Street and a car or two on Broad Street in the queue.
Backed up from here, or backed up from the construction?
Backed up onto Broad Street.
Due to this or due to construction?
No, there was no construction that day.
Okay, we did not observe that. You know, we have.
The day I was there, it was.
Yeah, no, I know that the times that we were out there, like I said, I know the other engineers that have gone out there, they did not notice that. I know I went out there on 2 different occasions, I didn't notice that. I think if you looked at the video more clearly in this situation, it does not approach that far down on the day that we did this, and just based on our observations. But you can see, you know, the traffic, you know, in the morning and the afternoon as far as how it is flowing on Broad Street, and then also in regards to the turning moments that do come up there. And we didn't have anything from the school that we observed that was backing up that far.
Do you have, you don't have video of Winter Street, do you?
I believe this is about the limits of what he had, but we could take a look to see how far over he went. But you can see the cars just for that stretch right there anyways. The ones that are taking the left turns and the right turns. And actually, one of the things I want to notice on this one too, is that when you look at Winter Street, there is a vehicle, there's a truck cab that's broken down there that somebody's working at the time of dismissal. And even with that, you can see it right in the corner. That did not seem to impact as far as the flow in that area.
Well, that wasn't why I asked. One observation, the corner to the northwest of the school on McCondray Street, when I went down there, there were cars parked on the west side of McCondray, north of the school, facing south, with people in them waiting to pick up students, and the cars were double stacked. And the day that I went down Winter Street, there were cars parked with people in them waiting all the way down to Titus. And there were a couple of driveways that were partially blocked by the back ends of these cars, presumably waiting to pick up students.
I can confirm on Winter Street, again, my observation. Whole street, there was a queue all the way down, almost, was it Meeting Street at the end?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happened on McCondray too, but it wasn't quite to Meeting Street on that day. So you're not getting a true comparison of some things that happen, I guess.
I mean, I wouldn't understand, because I don't think there's a lot of traffic that's on that street as far as, so I'm not sure why it would take that long to go ahead and make that turn from Winter out of there to create that type of queue, but. Yeah.
Well, they go around, they have to take their time to get a spot. We got these children, so you're gonna see that, you see that often. The McCondray Street video, this doesn't show the McCondray Street up to Elizabeth Street, where all the cars are piled up to Elizabeth Street. And some days, if it's a rainy day, you may have double parking so that they can drop off, pick up the kids because it's raining. So it's different situations on a different day. On a Cuno, today was a good day. I don't think all the kids are in school today, but it was a very good day today. I should say, maybe more than 50% improvement from what I've been seeing, but I also didn't see a large number of dismissal, so.
Yeah, and I've been out there, you know, and I've seen cars parking further to the north of McCondray, and I don't think those vehicles were always school-related. So I think there are cars that are
No,
over
there
there.
are some that park from the business. It says it
Correct.
right on the cars. You have the labels, you have the parking, you can tell, but you also see the parents inside the car. So
Mhm.
I don't take a car to go and see the school. I walk.
Mhm.
It's that close.
Correct. I think one of the things that, you know, we want to express is in regards to, you know, we look at this again, as I mentioned before. Is there some things that can be better? Yes. And that's what we're looking to do, is go ahead and show you a plan where any of these cars that we observed that were parked off-site, how we can get them, they're parked off-site, how we can go ahead and get them on-site for pickup and drop-off, so there is no cars stacked on any of the roadways. I think we're good, yeah. So I just, I want to go into now as far as the proposed conditions in regards to what we're looking to do to go ahead and get the cars off the roadway system and get them into the site in regards as far as drop off and pickup. So this is the morning drop off period. Again, it's a short period of time as far as the morning drop off. The vehicles, when they do come in, they're dropped off relatively quick, or I should say very quick. You're talking more than magnitude, as I said before, under 10 seconds. So what we're looking to do is we're going to go ahead and have two driveways or two entrances, one on Maple, also one on Jones Street. And there's actually going to be, I should say, two driveways on Maple and Jones. They're going to be in and out movements. So the one up on Maple Street, the one furthest to the west, is going to allow movements to come into the site. They're going to go counterclockwise, and they're going to exit to the easternmost driveway on Maple. That is going to be divided, and then we also have a drop-off and pickup that's going to be on the south side over on Jones Street. And again, we're going to have two driveways there. The first driveway is going to allow vehicles to come into the site, and then the other driveway closest to Winter Street is going to be the exit to allow cars come out of there. Then we're going to have the bus drop off in the area, as you showed before. They'll be coming in, they're going to drop it off, and we are looking to go ahead to accommodate as far as the pickup, as far as the buses. We're looking to go ahead and put in a bus drop off area also on Maple Street to go ahead and get that fifth bus out of that area. But as far as how parents are going to know in regards to where to drop off and pick up, Blackstone Valley Prep is going to go ahead and install a methodology as far as going ahead and giving tickets or color coding so cars know where they need to go. The parking lots will go ahead and be color coded as far as signage, so they'll know when they're coming to pick them up where to go. So that's going to help disperse the traffic during those times. Looking at the morning peak hour, like I said, with the amount of cars that are coming in and how quick they come and drop off, we don't anticipate any kind of backup that's going to go onto any of the side streets here. We will have 6 monitors that are going to go ahead and help with the traffic flow in the area, which will allow parents in regards to just going and taking a look at the students and also the parents as far as moving around. We are looking to go ahead and put a monitor right on McCondray at the crosswalk for anybody that's coming across there. We're also looking to have one as you enter onto the property by the McCondray entrance site. We're going to have by the entrance on Maple Street to go ahead and help with the traffic flow in that area. And then we're going to have them at 2 areas by the school in regards to having them get out of the vehicles and into the school area. And then we'll have one at the entrance on Jones Street. In order to impede any vehicles from going ahead and parking along Jones Street to drop them off and not use the parking lot, we are looking to put a fence along that whole side of the property there. That way nobody's going to drop off there. They'll have direct access onto the site. So that's something that we're looking to incorporate. This will go ahead and push people more in regards to make sure they drop off in the parking lot. And as I mentioned before, Mike will go ahead in regards to some of the other protocol that the school will do in order to go ahead and enforce this with the parents. During the PM peak hour, in the afternoon pickup, we're looking at the site and we're looking to go ahead and have queuing. As I mentioned before, we identified 41 cars on the street that were waiting as school is getting released. VHB went and noted in one of their documents that they had 40. So we went ahead and we were looking at double stack parking over in the area on the north side of the parking lot for the new parking lot that's on the east side of the school. So we'll allow double stack for that parking lot and also double stack for the parking lot on the south side. We are also looking to go ahead and use the McCondray Street parking lot, which will allow in that area vehicles to go ahead and stack along that parking lot the same way. So we'll be able to have 3 areas in regards where we're going to disperse the pickup areas. The numbers that will be allowed in this area are 41. Well, we have 41 queues for the overall queuing that we have now. With this, it could be allowed to have 57 cars with the potential to have probably another 3 or 4 if we wanted to extend the McCondray Street parking lot. I think that's where that number may have come from before as far as potential queuing on the McCondray. I believe we have, my eyes are bad, but I believe we have enough for 17 vehicles, I think it is, on McCondray parking lot. So, we can go ahead and increase that if we want to go ahead and extend it more to the driveway and allow more in that area. But the monitors on this situation, the same thing. You can see we included the bus pickup for 2 buses on the north side. We will have a total of 6 buses that are going to occur with the proposed expansion. So we'll be able to get 4 buses parked on the west side of the property or on the east side of McCoundry Street. We'll have the monitors at the crosswalk. We'll also have one on the other side where the students are being picked up in the parking lot. And then we'll also have the monitors similarly to the parking lot on the east side in regards to helping vehicles enter into the site and also get them to direct them to the vehicles in order to get them safely off site. So again, I know the question came up in regards to having a double stack pickup area. And I have seen schools that have had that. And one of the schools that we have, and again, we have a video which we could again share with you again, but it shows what's occurring right now at ES2 during their pickup time. And that's the school, it's an elementary school. Their monitors are out there helping the kids get in there. I think a lot of you have seen how this operates. So this is at dismissal time. The cars are waiting to go ahead and pick up the students. You do have a bus that's out front. But as the school goes in and gets out, you can see as they come out, how the students are coming in. They are monitoring in regards to what vehicles are coming in, who's coming in. They're able to get the student, get them safely in the car, and it moves very quickly as far as getting them off site. We went ahead, we did accommodate the 57 cars on here. We know that the volumes that are going to come in are going to be more than that, but I think during the pickup time, where we had 41 that we anticipate, we're trying to accommodate for 57. We can accommodate that, and as those cars pick up, there's certainly be more cars coming in. But we think at the dismissal time, we're able to go ahead and get enough room in order to go ahead to accommodate enough stacking in order to pick the cars up or pick up the students.
Can I just ask a clarification question of Mr. Chevlin? The buses on Maple Street, will those be on BVP property or on the town road?
They're going to be bumping out. I believe that's going to be encroaching into where the existing landscape area is.
So it'll be on BVP
I
property?
think that's going to be on BVP
Because
property.
just so you know, if it's on town property, we're going to have to get council approval for no parking there between whatever and whatever.
Yeah, I believe with the layout, I believe it is BVP
Okay.
property there.
I do, because that's been a question in my mind.
I mean, Kelly, looking at it in that area with the width, like I said, right now it's 42 feet. And, I see the buses parked there. I see cars parked there. I see them on the other side. And it does allow two-way traffic. We just thought this would help the traffic flow as far as just having more of a pull-out area.
It's not about, I understand there's enough space. It's about, what if there are cars parked there? There's no way to get the buses
I see what
there.
you're saying. Yeah,
So that's the issue.
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry, yeah. And again, we could share you these videos so you can see them better. Like I said, I know it's choppy right now. It's tough to really kind of follow, but we can share these videos so you can look at them on your own time. So as far as just going back to the parking, we were just identifying on here in regards to the proposed 128 total spaces that we're going to have between the two parking areas. The existing, we have 71 spaces required by zoning. With the expansion, it's going to be 110 spaces. We're proposing 128, so there'll be enough parking there. Our observations based on the parking that we have right now, there's, we've gone out there probably 4 or 5 times. There's always been parking that has not been used on an order of magnitude of 4 to 6 cars within the lots. So we think there's going to be ample parking in regards to handling this during the school time period. And the next slide is, just a summary in regards to what is different that's occurring out in that area. And we're just showing you in regards to what the existing conditions are with the 400 students and what the volumes are as far as the type of usage during the AM morning arrival time, and then what it's going to be for the PM or the afternoon peak time when the pickup occurs. You can see basically, we're going to be adding 73 more cars into the traffic stream. We're going to go ahead and be able to go ahead and take with the new queuing, we're going to be able to take 51 of those cars off the street. So we should be able to go ahead and be able to get all the cars off when they are waiting for pickup. We'll be adding 1 bus. The faculty will be increasing by 34. And then the student drivers, we're going to increase the permitting for them from 20 to 30. And then similarly in the afternoon, there'll be less amount of pickup in the afternoon than there is drop off in the morning. where we project out to be about 118 cars being picked up. So there's about 32 more cars that you're going to see on the street. Similarly, you're going to have the same amount of queuing on site, and then the buses and faculty will stay the same. And then we just want to show you a slide in regards to the event parkings. I know that has come up. So a lot of the events that are occurring, graduations, sporting events, there is parking on site that'll be available when school is out, and there is an event that occurs. But VBP also does have 4 other lots that are in the walking distance of the area. 3 of them are less than a 5-minute walk, and then one of them, the Main Street lot's about a 9-minute walk. But even within the the 4-minute walk area, we have an additional, with the 4 lots, we have an additional 121 spaces on top of what we have on site. So to handle any kind of event that they have there that are off peak during the school hours, they should be able to accommodate that parking in those areas. So just to summarize in regards to our traffic study and our operations, we feel our analysis is very conservative, with the COVID numbers. Again, we feel like the volumes that we have right now are probably at the highest point. We feel once things get back together or stop as far as the pandemic, and also as far as things get better as far as staffing, the school is having an issue, as all schools are, as far as getting bus drivers. So that has affected their operations. But once we're able to go ahead and incorporate those, that's going to go ahead and help with the students getting back on the buses and taking more cars off the street. So we feel that our numbers that we are analyzing right now are on the high side in regards to what we studied. Even with what we studied, we found that there's no significant impacts to the Broad Street intersections. In lieu of just make some modifications of Broad Street and Church Street intersection, and also again in regards to Broad and Mill Street. And those are 2 intersections that we mentioned before. As this project proceeds, we'll work with the DOT, we'll work with the town, we'll work with the peer reviewer as far as going ahead and see if we can move those initiatives further with the DOT as far as what can be done. So some of the improvements that you can expect to see with the approved plan, adding a bus drop on Maple Street, which will improve the McCondry drop-off area for the buses. It'll help with the circulation. You'll have no vehicles that are going to be butting out into the traffic stream. So it will allow better traffic flow in that area. The traffic monitors that will be deployed will be out there to go ahead and restrict any parking on McCondry Street. So that will be going away. What the school plans to do is to make sure that we do restrict them. They'll be notifying parents, and they'll be working to go ahead and get them so they do use the 3 parking lots for pickup and drop off. So that'll help in regards to any vehicles that are parked on the roadway system. The site circulation, again, for the pickup and drop off, we think is going to be improved in regards to what's going on out there right now. I think there's a system that's going to be put in place that's going to help with that and make that more efficient. And then the measures to go ahead and discourage any off-street parking, again, the school will be implementing those with the parents. And, just as far as the parking requirements, I think, we have shown that, we will exceed in regards to what the parking requirements are, and also we will exceed in regards to what the parking needs have been during the school day. With that, that's a brief summary in regards to where we're at right now, and, open for questions if everyone wants that, or however you want to proceed.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just before Mr. Sheldon finishes testimony, I just had several questions for him. Sure. Excuse me. Mr. Sheldon, with respect to the testimony that you've provided tonight, including the findings you have made, as well as the opinions that you have rendered, have you offered them to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty with respect to traffic engineering?
Yes, we have.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in first, because the big thing in my mind is what's going on Broad Street, okay? You've showed your videos for what happens around the school, and what I'm curious is, what does the traffic look like on Broad Street, given that you have how many schools right along that section of Broad Street? It'd be nice to see something there.
Yeah, the videos that we supplied, you can see Broad Street in the upper half, and you see in that area, the traffic is flowing pretty steadily during the times that we went and we videotaped that. So when the schools are arriving, and leaving, you can see on Broad Street how it's moving, pretty easily. Now, yeah, we've driven that, and there are some, you go down there, BF Norton, the other schools or buses that are coming into school, it does impact traffic flow. That's at every school. I drive over Mendon Road, to go to work, the high schools, not that we're trying to say, well, that's bad, so why can't we be bad? But that occurs for a short period of time when you have a school who has arrivals and dismissals with the volumes they have. But I think we are trying to accommodate it in regards to trying to minimize it, and I think it works.
The other thing I'm interested in, again, Broad Street and the traffic, is how long is there, heavy traffic, and, and time-wise. You saw, let's see, the dismissal for the high school is, let's see if I get it right, 7:17 a.m., I mean, that's, I'm sorry, 2:38 p.m. to 2:54 p.m. And of course, ES2, I believe, is like 3:05 to 3:17. Okay, so they're sort of, yeah, they're spaced a little bit, but they're almost on top of each other, so you have this duration of, from, let's say, especially if parents are picking up the kids, they're probably already there, from my experience, because I have a grandson that's down at McCourt, and this is his first year, and before then he was at Garvin, and especially in the afternoon, we all recognize that the greater amount of traffic is always in the afternoon and not the drop-off, because the drop-off is what it is, but everybody's there to pick up their children. And now, so I'm looking at a period of time that's probably between 2 p.m. to, let's say 3:30. Am I correct? That's what I'm interested in, is how much traffic there is on Broad Street and for what the duration is.
Actually, the traffic on Broad Street starts about 2:30 to around that time, and it goes until about 3:30. And that includes the BF North after. So you have the high school, you have the Broad Street, you have the St. Patrick's, and you have the BF North. I can tell you that all these cars, the pickup cars, are going to run into Broad Street. A few are going Central Falls way, but in Pawtucket, very few that way. Most of them are going the other way. They go through Elizabeth Street, they use Mill Street, they use Titus Street, because they go up that way, and they all exit into, it's drop off Broad Street. Turn right, you encounter the traffic at St. Patrick's, and then encounter the traffic above. I have pictures that I can show you. It's a nightmare, and that is the time period that we all know not to leave the house, not to make doctor's appointments, not to go anywhere, because you can't move. And I'm quite shocked about these traffic lights that they're proposing. What are you proposing? Because what is that going to do to the business? More traffic lights, more stops, that Broad Street cannot take any more. We have the traffic lights up there.
Correct.
The traffic light on Chambers, not John Street, and the traffic light on Church Street, which was already Y2 at that time. I know I voted on it, and I talked about it at this board, and now I still say we shouldn't have done that, and we shouldn't have done that. But the St. Patrick's traffic adds to this nightmare. And the cars that are supposed all to turn right, they're still turning, they're still coming down, turning left. And the monitors are there, but they're inside the lot, they're not right at the street. And obviously the teachers cannot stop these parents from turning whatever way they want to. So it is a big issue for that 1 hour at least.
Yeah, and I think, ES2.
And that goes from, I'm sorry, but that goes from really Shea Street up to Forest Avenue.
I think ES2, I think what you're finding there is that that operation isn't as efficient as it was. And I think, again, as I stated before, you do have a lot more cars going to that
Yeah.
school now because of the pandemic. You do have the shortage of drivers that's affecting the schedules. You know, they're the bus drivers now because shorter, they need to go ahead and pick up the students after the release. So now those students who are supposed to stay or are gonna stay there later, their parents are now also picking up because they don't want the students there longer, being the last ones off the property. So that, I think before, and, I was involved in the traffic study for ES2. And I recollect going ahead and asking folks after that was put in place for 6 months for a year, and I got a lot of feedback from people in town hall saying, no issues, it works great when it opened up.
If they, only if the plan is followed. There's not a good record of their plan being followed.
That's what
The academy
Yeah,
altogether.
and I think that's one of the reasons why they changed their plan on there, is because of the change in regards to the volumes that were coming to the school because of the pandemic. So I think they're trying to adjust just to go ahead and try to.
Pandemic
make
is
it
over.
better. I hope so.
Mr. Scott?
In regard to the traffic lights, I know Isabel doesn't want traffic lights at every corner, and I don't either. But the Mill Street, Broad Street area is definitely an issue. How long would it take to get that light in place, if you can get it?
I mean, the DOT, I'm sure, would want to have a study, like I said, we did a warrant analysis, which showed that based on the volumes and the crashes, that it is warranted. I think it's work with DOT and seeing if they can go ahead and get that on their agenda as far as installing a traffic signal. I mean, time-wise, as far as the DOT, if they did approve it, it'd probably be, I don't want to speak for DOT, but a good 6 months, a year, whoever it may be. I mean, doing the study, then going ahead and doing the design plans, and then going ahead and ordering the material and everything else. So it would take, I would say less than a year, I'd hope, if they approved it.
Well, I mean,
The bus drivers,
yeah, I understand the DOT issue, but the point I'm trying to make is that in order to make this work the way you're presenting it, you need a light there in order to control traffic, because I've been there 2:30, 3:30. I mean, the traffic just backs up, not only on Mill Street, but the cars that are getting ready to turn in and out of schools is another issue. And I think one thing we're forgetting about all of this traffic is the businesses on Broad Street. They're gonna take a beating now because they've been going through construction for so long. And then to add this on to it, hopefully the renovation is gonna be done before the school will be built, but, it concerns me about the businesses too. I don't think anybody's taken that into account, because we've had 6 or 7 businesses write to us in regard to their businesses being impacted by the traffic. Now, I went by St. Patrick's the other day, and there's no crossing guard there.
No, there's no crossing guards, period.
The traffic was stopped for the light. There were people trying to come out, obviously, to school. And I know this isn't a high school issue, I realize that, but it impacts all of this, I think, because of where the schools are. And it just exacerbating the problem all over again, to add more traffic. And I just feel bad for the businesses, but I do think that we need a light at that Mill Street intersection, because it really is a dangerous situation.
Yeah, that, as I mentioned before, that is something that, is probably moving forward, we would go ahead and coordinate that with DOT and, see what we can get done for that and show them the information that we have provided. And I don't want to speak for VHB, but I think they somewhat concurred based on our analysis that, a signal is warranted there and it could be installed, but I'll let VHB speak for themselves.
Maybe, Mr. Navroja?
Yep. So you did traffic analysis of Broad Street, traffic counts and all that.
Mm-hmm.
When looking at that information, is there a way to look at it in comparison to similar areas with similar population densities and all that, and make a determination as to whether or not the traffic that's currently there is, whether it's at capacity, over capacity, is it any higher of a traffic volume than anywhere else of a similar nature?
Yeah, I think when you look at the analysis, you know, the signalized intersections don't have anything that operates at level service E or F. So it's showing that those are operating efficiently. I think part of the problem in regards to some of the congestion is the amount of curb cuts, you know, not only for, you know, the schools along the corridor, but there's other businesses and such that impact as far as traffic flow. And, you know, I think looking at it too, it's not only in regards to the school traffic, but I think even when you look at the commuter peak hour, you know, there's traffic volumes there too, and they operate similar conditions as when the school gets out. So you're looking at a peak hour when people are going home from work at 4:30, 5:30, you still got a good amount of traffic that's commuter traffic along that corridor.
Right. Okay, so from a traffic engineering point of view, this roadway, as it currently is with whatever is proposed, you know, for the high school, is more than adequate to handle the volume, you know, of what it is today plus the additional without what you would consider a major impediment to the.
Yeah, I would say based on the expansion that we're proposing and the amount of volumes that could be generated from this expansion, that it wouldn't have any significant decrease. I know people don't, I heard somebody say they don't like the word significant, but you know, it's still going to operate at the same level of service.
Right. And is there any way to determine what the upper limit would be? Like if perhaps the school expanded, or if St. Patrick's got developed, or Ann Hope, or something like that? How close are we to creating an upset situation where?
Yeah, some of that analysis could go ahead and show that as far as, you know, what is that number that triggers when you start getting failure of some of the intersections.
Do we have an understanding of how close we are to that, though?
Well, I think the approach is we're like level service D worst case. So, you know, you're looking at, you know, in order to get to, you know, level of service E, which is approaching, you know, it's a matter of, you know, the amount of volumes and how much delay you're going to create. But I'd have to go ahead and take a further look in regards to what that number is. That off the top of my head right now.
Sorry, just for clarification,
No,
the rating that you're saying, the D and the E, what's the scale?
It's I believe for a signalized intersection, I think D and the max is 55 seconds. Bear with me for a sec.
So it's more of a timing thing as opposed to
Some
like
delay.
a
It's based on
grade.
delay. Correct. Yeah, so for the signalized intersection, level service D is between 35 and 55 seconds. Level service E is delay of 55 seconds to 80 seconds.
Okay, so we're currently at D.
You're like D, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You stated that we're gonna add 73 cars in the morning, I think you said, and that.
I believe that was the number, yes.
And that wouldn't change that delay at all, that light, you know?
No. No, not based on the analysis we performed.
So if you were to put in that light, that means you've got to resync all the lights up the road, am I correct?
You'd want to go ahead and coordinate, any arterial like that, you're going to want to coordinate the signals to help with traffic flow. And it's definitely going to, from High Street down to that intersection and beyond, you're probably going to want to coordinate signals.
I know the answer, but I want for the record so that everybody else understands what's involved in putting a light in. It's not just going out there and putting it in. You've got to reprogram and set reset all the lights all the way up Broad Street and so on, so they all sync for that particular reason. So you have your red band and your green band.
Right.
Yeah.
Back with, as far as the number of cars Were you involved in the initial development when they developed the high school, as far as the traffic study goes, or? or-
I may have reviewed the study at the time, but I know Amy Archer from our office was the one who came and testified and was more heavily involved on a daily basis.
All right, so we're adding approximately 150 students. They said there's 400 now, then going to be a total of 550. And that's going to add 73 cars, and that's estimated. So going from 0 to the first 400 students, how many cars did that add? Or do you have that answer? We have 400 students now. How many cars would that have added initially to the traffic?
400 students?
Yeah.
How many are getting dropped off? 194.
Okay, well, just doing the math here, 73 cars that's going to be added now, adding 150 students, is about 50% of the student population. So the 400 would have added 200 cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're at 194.
What?
We're at 194 as far as drop off.
Okay, 194, okay.
Yeah.
And did the 194 change the level of service at those traffic lights on Broad Street?
The 194? The 194 is there now.
Right, but it wasn't there a few years ago. I'm just saying the level of service never seems to change, but we've added 194, now we're adding 73, never changes.
Yeah, I don't have that information right now, but
Yeah,
certainly
just,
go ahead and
you
look
can
that up.
understand it just defies logic.
Yeah,
Anytime we get traffic studies, now we've had 194 added, no level of service change. 73 added, no level of service change. If we came in with another 300 cars, I probably hear no level of service change, because not to, it's not personal, okay? I know.
Sure it's not.
Certainly it's not. You're doing your job. But I've never heard a traffic study engineer come in and say, this is gonna be a problem. It's always never a problem with the level of service change, even though we've added 170, 270 cars that time period since the school opened, or will in total add that amount. I don't know when the level of service ever changes.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, we're saying, during the morning, we're adding 73 more cars, and as I mentioned before, they do get dispersed, they do, as Ms. Reese mentioned, they do go different directions. There are a lot that go on Broad, but there are other directions that they go. When people do go ahead and, if they can, they avoid that area. So it does affect it as far as who's driving and where they're going.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, just for the record, if I recall, the approval for the high school was based on a representation that there was a capacity of 330 students. So I would argue that at 400, there are already 70 students over what you approved. And so I would add that to your equation.
The other thing that comes to mind is that also, I'm assuming, okay, that when you're adding that many more students, you're gonna have to add teaching staff and the staff to the school. So is there a number that's also included as to how many more teachers? 34 more teachers.
Correct, 34 faculty and staff.
I don't recall that, but.
Yeah, so they're going to be going from 56 to 90 faculty and staff.
Right, okay.
And you look at those, they're in the course of the peak hour, but when the school's arriving, they're coming in earlier. Traffic volumes in the streets are lower. They're coming in at like 7 o'clock.
Oh, understood, yeah.
So, they may not fall within that peak hour. So they are, they're dispersed at different times.
And they just stay later.
At that school, they stay late.
Yeah.
They're the last ones off, and they're late, so.
I have another question, and this may be something that you might not know, but when you're looking at the amount of student cars, and you're basing it, I'm assuming, on a percentage of, 25% of students at the high school are going to be seniors, so they're most likely going to be the age group that's going to be driving. So is that how the numbers created with that assumption? Or, do we know if, as the expansion happens, is it going to be coming in from the freshman level and then filling up from the top, or is it going to be coming in from all different grades?
That's something I'll let the folks from BVP talk in more detail as far as how they're gonna go ahead and they're gonna
Right, 'cause-
have this expansion with students. And the same thing with the parking passes, as far as how they go in and release those to the students. But I think part of it is in regards to what's available for parking. And I think they do have a system in place in regards to who's eligible for a pass.
Right, I'm just wondering how the number was quantified, what the assumptions are.
Yeah, I'll be frank with you, those are numbers we're given. They have 20 passes right now, and with the expansion, they're gonna expand that up to 30.
Okay.
But I think they could provide a better answer for you than I do as far as how those numbers were brought about.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Stevens.
considering there is a discussion about passes and color-coded queuing systems, I think it'd be incumbent upon you to your satisfaction, find out from the applicant how that might be enforced in the future. Because as we discussed, this is a public school, there's no enforcement that the department can see as practicable. So if that could be abandoned, without impunity, or with impunity.
Yeah, I have that in my notes.
Mr. Chairman, if you,
Yes, sir.
if you'd wish, I could call the Chief Operations Officer, Mr. DiMatteo, to speak to that process.
At this point, I think if everybody's asked Mr. Shevlin the questions that have for him at the moment, I'd like to hear from our peer review. Okay. But please keep that in mind.
Good evening. My name is Robert Clinton from VHB. We have conducted a peer review, and we received the pile of papers a couple days ago. I went through them the best of my ability, and I still need a little more time, like you guys do, to fully absorb all this. But a lot of the things that were said tonight, we agree with. That the amount of stacking that was observed, we came up with similar numbers of queued vehicles. Our biggest concern is the PM peak. When you have the parents waiting for students to exit the building, and the enforcement of the policies. As far as double stacking and the graphics that were shown at the elementary school, I don't know if we can pull those back up again, but we just noted that at the elementary school, there's a lot more room between the double stacked rows, and that in the proposed parking lot, they're going to be stacked a lot closer together. And when you do have a little bit more room stacked between, it's a little easier to walk between the vehicles to get to the second row of stacked cars. So there are some differences between the operation at an elementary school and the high school. The elementary school, it's a little bit easier to corral all the kids together, and you get to know like whose car is whose, and we've seen that operation work. And high school kids are a different group of challenges. The way it operates today, they pretty much disperse out onto the local streets. They have the ability to, as soon as their student gets in the car, to leave. We do have some concerns with the PM peak, with vehicles being trapped in the lot and being able to get around if one of the cars in there. They did show some graphics of how that could work, but a plan is only as good as the enforcement and how monitors, how well parents listen to the monitors. And you brought up some good points as far as the existing operation down the street, the ability of monitors to enforce the right turn only. They don't have a lot of authority, and people give respect to police details more than they do someone, just wearing a vest. So that's a concern of ours. And also, I think you are going to get some parents that, that there's theory and then there's reality. In theory, you could double stack and you could have this thing operate efficiently. But, when you have a situation where you have the possibility of getting blocked in a parking lot, you're going to get parents dropping off on the street, and it's going to be difficult to enforce. So those are our main concerns. I can answer any questions, points that we agree with, disagree with. As far as the traffic signal, it does meet the warrants, and it is a DOT roadway, so they would have to be the ones that would approve that. So, and that's something that happens under existing conditions. So whether the high school's there or not, whether they do their expansion, they need to pursue that option, or the town or somebody should pursue that, because it is an existing issue that should be addressed.
That was one of my concerns and one of my thoughts, and you brought it up about when you've got those cars stacked there in the parking lot, and somebody wants to get out and so on and so forth. It's not, it looks nice on paper, but in actual practical application, it doesn't always work smoothly. Of course, the other thing is human nature. No matter how you set a plan together, people are gonna go, they're gonna take basically the path of least resistance. So they're not gonna necessarily follow that particular route that, they're supposed to be going. They'll go take a different street and so on and so forth. I'd already mentioned that I have a grandson that's in the middle school, and the one thing that goes against my crowd, and the school's done a great job as far as the pickup and the drop off, but on the main street in there, people will pull over, okay, and stop and drop the students off, and then take off, because it's too much of an inconvenience for them to follow the rule and to drive down and in this case, they go behind the school to drop off the kids, and they go right back out. Really smooth. But there are people who are going to just do that. They're gonna say, I don't care what the rules are. I'm gonna do what I deem please. And they do that, and then all of a sudden it backs up traffic on the street because they're not following the rules. So what I'm getting at is basically what works in theory, as you say, practical application is a completely different beast, because you're actually dealing with human nature.
But there's also advantages and disadvantages of the street drop off versus.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's an easier, quicker operation rather than going through a lot. So there are advantages, and you brought up some of the disadvantages of having drop offs and pickups on the street. So you got to kind of weigh things and look at, is this better or worse or about the same as it is today?
The advantage is it's convenient for the parent to drop the child off right there. Okay. The inconvenience is everybody who's coming in off of, in this case, High Street, okay, onto Highland, that they got to stop and wait for this person, and the child has to open up the door, and they don't get that easy because he's got his backpack and everything else, and everybody else down behind the car, and they're waiting. So it's nice and convenient for the parent that's dropping off their child, because they can just take off, but everybody else wait. And not only that, but that street, there's only one way the buses go. So you're also, I got it timed right anyway, so I kind of avoid all the buses go through to drop the students off. I try to avoid that, and once in a while, if I'm 5 minutes late or whatever, I'm in the mix with the rest of the buses. But that's the nature of the beast. Does anybody else have
Yeah.
any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
I just want to say that it doesn't really eliminate 194 cars going into Broad Street, plus 100, maybe less, from the Broad Street School, plus the 50 or 60 from the St. Patrick's School, which is counting these. But I'm going to tell you that it's not 194. It's over 250 cars that you're going to see dropping off kids that come from everywhere.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I'm sorry, but
Go ahead.
we're talking about 194, but in my mind, it's not 194. It's a lot more on Broad Street.
Yeah, but the issue on Broadway is not solely related to the schools. There's a lot of driveways, there's a lot of intersections, there's a lot of side friction that causes the traffic flow along Broadway
On Broad Street?
On Broad Street, I'm
But
sorry.
they all coming from the school.
To be-
I've lived in the area for over 50 years. And those cars were there, those houses were there. There's nothing new in the area except the schools. And I voted for the school to be there because I wanted the area to look nice. It was a dump before, I'm not saying, and right now I'm like, why did I do that? But the cars, the traffic was not like that. I've been, 1969, I moved into that area and I'm still there. So it doesn't really, nothing compares, nothing. It's not the construction goes on once in a while, take the construction away. These cars are still gonna be there. There's cars parked on the right side of Broad Street. They were always there. It doesn't change.
But as far as the volume on Broad Street, a lot of the traffic that's just traveling through Broad Street, using Broad Street as a,
That's the only street.
right,
we have.
right. And so the people that aren't related to the school that are traveling down Broad Street have so much side friction that the volumes, when you go ahead and count the volumes on Broad Street, they may be deflated. They may be not the actual number of cars. It's counting the number of cars that get through, not the number of cars that want to get through. So you have all those cars backed up and traveling slow through the area and being affected by all these driveways and side streets. So the actual volume on Broad Street, just traveling through the area, may be higher than actually counted. And the other thing too, to remember is that some people may be avoiding the area, like we've talked about too, because you don't travel in those times too. And that happens in a lot of near a lot of schools. You know, people say they know not to travel during certain times of the day. And it is a concentrated peak, like John explained, very concentrated.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Salvatore.
Just, I'm not sure if this is necessary, but Mr. Resnick had Mr. Shevlin submitted as an expert. So I would just offer that you just deem Mr. Clinton an expert so that we have, the same playing field. Thank you.
Absolutely understood. So can you just give us your education? Sure. Years you've been in business and so on.
Yes, I graduated in 1986 with a bachelor in engineering. I'm a registered professional engineer. I've presented in front of most of the same boards that Mr. Shevlin's presented in front of and been accepted as an expert witness. I do about half of the work for the DOT on major projects from the viaduct 95 to, and I also do private developments too. And I've done a number of schools too, so.
Thank you. Relative to, and I only read through just a cursory look of the responses, the comments that you raised and sent those comments to Power Engineering for their responses. And we haven't touched upon that at all at this point in time. And I'm curious to see, find out what's been resolved, what's still hanging in the air, and so on.
Yeah, like I mentioned, our biggest concern is that the PM peak, the stacking of cars, the double stacking in the parking lot, how that's going to operate, and how it's going to be enforced. At one point, they mentioned that the monitors would be or wouldn't be directing traffic or doing anything on the town streets. I guess in the latest version, it's in bold that they will not be directing traffic. However, just crossing McCondry Street, they say that a monitor is going to be there, and I don't know how the police department feels about any of that, or if there's going to be training, and they have mentioned that there was training before for some of the staff. That's a whole issue that the town needs to address.
Okay, so there's
Mr.
nothing
Chairman?
really- Mr. McDonald?
The only provision I believe in state law for a private citizen to regulate traffic in some way is as a crossing guard, which, having a flag or a sign, they have the authority to step out in a public, this is a public road, not private property, and hold up a sign and stop traffic solely for the purposes of allowing a pedestrian to safely cross a public road. The idea of directing traffic to stop or start or stand or turn, they don't have the authority, and it's a bad idea. That's why the police department submitted that letter. And the school, potentially, it's a reach, but they leave themselves open if there's ever traffic, and heaven forbid someone gets hurt. That's how lawsuits happen. So to talk about, if that's resurrected itself, about them regulating traffic on a public street, it's not a good idea.
Mr. Resnick?
Thank you. With respect to our plan that's been presented this evening and the 6 monitors that were referenced, they would only be regulating traffic internally, not on any public streets. And I just want to note, and I'm sure the board is aware of this based on your observations, I can speak to the observations that I've seen in the town. Many members of my team can. I saw crossing guards all the way up and down Broadway at public schools doing much more in regulating traffic, serving in every capacity with stop signs, directing traffic, stopping it. I saw about 6 or 7 people. So while that's really not relevant to our project because of the fact that we're not doing that, I think it is important for the board to know, because I have seen some correspondences to the board from your staff that doesn't happen, that doesn't occur. Please, I invite you to go out to Broad Street. It's happening up and down the street. So whether it's illicit or not, it's occurring.
Mr. Chairman?
Well,
Mr. McDonald?
You just got us into an argument around whataboutism. If they're doing whataboutism, if public schools are doing that, then shame on them. 2 wrongs don't make a right, 3 wrongs don't make it more right.
That wasn't my point. I'm just clarifying the record to let you know that on public streets within this town,
Well,
it's happening left and right.
but
But
that's-
it's not germane to this project at all, because nothing that's been presented to you this evening is stated that we would be utilizing monitors in that way at all. I'm just stating that is occurring every day.
I'm referring to what's already on the record from what we've had before, and the idea of monitors and the letter from the police department saying it's a bad idea. That's relevant. What they do at a public school elsewhere in a town is not relevant to what's going on tonight. And to bring it up and try and indirectly justify or say.
I'm not justifying it all. You've completely misinterpreted my words.
Why did you bring it up?
Well, because there's been communications to this board, respectfully, from your planner in a staff memorandum that says it doesn't happen in town. It's not accurate.
Mr. Chairman, that was based on the original proposal provided by the applicant. That the staff report was a recommendation that was provided to you based on the proposal. Now, I did do some research on crossing guards. Mr. McDonald is correct. They have statutory authority to cross children across the street in a crosswalk. If BVP is only going to monitor internally, that's fine. Not sure that it's enforceable. Again, that's the thing that we keep bringing up, is the enforcement issues. And I have asked Mr. Kelly several occasions, tell us how we are going to enforce these conditions that you are proposing. Tell us how. No one has told us how we are going to enforce any of these things if BVP decides not to do it, which they've done on conditions of their previous approvals.
And with respect, for this hearing this evening, it was stipulated to, and it was requested by these members, that we limit the testimony this evening to Mr. Shevlin and your peer reviewer. So when we come back here next time, with respect to the enforcement issues that are of a different variety and discussing as is conditions in a proposed development plan, we will provide that testimony. It's going to be by and through representatives of BVP. But I don't want to get out in front of that or address it at this point, because that's not my understanding of what we're addressing this evening. And I like it to focus on what's before the board with respect to this evening.
Okay. Agreed. But since you opened the door.
I didn't open the door. I
No,
just
wait
wanted
a
to
minute.
make clear.
Wait a minute, you talked about crossing guards, okay? Because I've already told you that I have firsthand knowledge, okay? That I take my grandson to school and I drop him off, and I've done it since he's been in elementary school, okay? And I go along Diamond Hill Road, there are crossing guards, and I've yet to see any crossing guard do anything other than, when the children are waiting, just come over, they got their little sign that says stop, they walk out to the middle, okay, and let the kids go by, and once the kids are on the other side, they go back to their post. I've never seen, and what I'm telling you is that I've never seen any crossing guard, at least along Diamond Hill Road, ever direct traffic, other than stopping cars to allow the students to cross. So I just, since you opened the door,
It's fine.
and I want to.
And what I give to you tonight is not testimony. I'm an attorney. I'm relying on my team's observations. I invite you to go out there. There's more going on with respect to what's going on than holding up a sign. There's traffic
I
direction.
can tell you that on Diamond Hill Road,
I
travel all the
don't
time,
understand.
and there's more than one school on Diamond Hill Road.
I don't
Every
know.
cross guard is doing exactly what they're supposed to do. So if there's something else going on, I'm not arguing that it isn't. I'm not even suggesting that it doesn't happen. But I've never observed it from the crossing guards that do all the intersections that they're assigned to along Diamond Hill Road for Garvin School and for McCourt and.
Understood.
Yeah.
Seeing that you mentioned like my observations, so we have 3 crossing guards at BF North. I do observe them because I observe everything else, right?
I'm sorry, you said
So
we.
3, you mentioned that I observe a lot of things. Yes,
Do you work for the school? I'm just trying
I
to
don't
understand.
work with the school. I told you I was retired, but I walk that area. 3 crossing guards at BF Norton, and I have never seen them do anything else besides, here we go, children and adults. Sometimes the parents go and with their children.
We seem to have different observations.
And I
Chair.
invite those teachers and observers that are observing to please call me. I would be more than happy to one day to be with them and go with them and see exactly what's going on and see what I'm seeing from my point of view for this entire area.
I think what Ms. Reese was saying, we meaning the Cumberland School Department. She's
Yeah.
referring to the crossing guards.
The crossing
Not
guards, yeah,
we
now
as she's-
we, no,
Not we, as she's
right.
part of the.
Sorry, I was
Right.
just confused.
Yeah, no,
I
we,
just wanted to
like,
understand the
yeah.
relationship. Thank you. And just one final thing, Mr. Chairman, just while you have your peer reviewer here. I would renew our request at this meeting that my engineering team, Mr. Shevlin and his team, have the opportunity to have a meeting with the town's peer reviewer to discuss their peer review, to discuss our responses. I want to tell you that in my experience, as well as Attorney Kelly's, perhaps I haven't been practicing as long as him, but I do appear before many municipal boards in this state. And I have to tell you that my experience with respect to peer review is that often a town as well as board members, welcome the collaboration between a peer reviewer as well as a team's engineer. And the reason being is that the goal, or what the goal should be with respect to a peer review, is to look at plans, make them better, with the overall goal, getting it to a place where it's an appropriate project, where concerns are obviated that the board raised. And I think we would invite that process. We've requested it on numerous occasions. It's completely appropriate, and I think it will make for a better project. And I'm sure Mr. Shevlin would share with me that sentiment, or having that opportunity to discuss that with his colleague. And I think we could really get somewhere if that kind of open dialogue was allowed.
I think Ms. Salvador can address that.
I'm gonna say this for the umpteenth time. I've said it in writing, emails, correspondence, at this meeting. VHB did not think it was appropriate to privately discuss PAR's plan. And because, again, we want this to be an open, transparent situation. VHB made that opinion. However, yes, I have it in writing. By the way, let me finish. We, as the town department, have made several invitations to your office and Steve Izzy's office to meet in public at a TRC meeting with both VHB and PAR, in writing, in emails. I also said to you at our last meeting, if the board wants or authorizes VHB to meet privately with PAR, you can do that. VHB, and frankly, I believe it too, we think that everything should be done in public so that there's no transparency issues. And we think that's appropriate.
We would have no objection to it being a transparent process. We have two accredited professionals. I believe that they could work together in a way that would not give anybody a concept that the review was opaque or was being driven by some type of bias. And we would welcome some type of forum, whatever it may be. And perhaps Mr. Modica or perhaps the town solicitor could sit down with us and be part of that process.
This is something that we've been inviting since they submitted their traffic study. I just want to put that on the record. It's in writing. Everything that Mr. Kelly has said that, you know, we're keeping them away from each other, not true. We have invited them to meet, and they have.
It is my hope before the next meeting, before this board, that happens. Thank you.
I'd just like to correct the record just a little bit. There was some language written in the proposal, right? There was. No, but there was some language in the proposal that stated something about expedited payment for expedited review or something like that.
Yes.
And the town, I don't know who put that language in there or what.
BVP wanted you to expedite your review, and you did not think that was appropriate.
Right. And
Neither did I.
that's where the issue came up with, you know, it made it appear that they were paying us extra money to expedite our review, which is completely false. Our fee is what our fee is to review the plans. We didn't charge an expediting fee or anything like that. And because of that issue, we felt that it was, that any meetings that we had should be in front of the town, just to make sure everybody was comfortable with all the conversations that happened. It wasn't that we recommended that. We were kind of forced into a situation, and it is true that on most occasions that I've been involved in peer reviews, the peer reviewer, they're professionals. We're professionals. If we find a mistake or something, you know, everybody makes mistakes. They point them out and they say, hey, you got to rerun these numbers. These numbers don't make any sense. And you know, we don't have a problem meeting with them, or you know, we're not going to do anything inappropriate, because that's why I work for the company I do. We do things above the board. We're a legit company. And I feel that's how I'm able to sleep at night. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Stop.
I believe both of you are professionals. The issue I have is if it's not in a open, public or transparent situation, if the two of you got together and it was private, we wouldn't know who was right, who was wrong, and if you disagreed, who was going to mediate it. I mean, so I think if there is a meeting established and the planning board, if it's Mr. Monica or Mrs. Salvatore, that's fine with me. I don't have a problem with that. I think that we rely on their input to us anyway. So that's fine if that wants to get established. As a final thing, I think we should make a motion to continue this. We've gotten the information that we wanted from both parties, I think this evening, unless anybody's got more questions of the two gentlemen, I think we should move to continue this particular discussion.
Before we adjourn, we were talking about we quick talked about the placards, the colored placards, that they're going to tell which lot to use. The only way that you can enforce something like that is to look at the cars that are coming in at the street level to say, yeah, blue, red, green, whatever colors they're going to use. Right. And that has to be done at the street level.
Yeah. I think you brought up both gentlemen have brought up questions that we're going to review going forward. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before your peer reviewer concludes his testimony this evening, I'd just like to ask him one question.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you're going to be taking cross-examination, right?
No, not at this point in time.
I don't really think it's in the vein of cross-examination. I just wanted to ask one brief question of the peer reviewer, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of testimony next time.
I think you need to address the board.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
As long as we don't go down a slippery slope.
Yes, just a couple questions.
Yeah. The way we're going to, Mr. Chairman, this is going to turn into a cross. Mr.
It's not going
Shevlin,
to turn into a cross. I'm going to ask two
can I
questions.
finish, please?
You started with one question, now you're going
So
to two.
my suggestion is that Mr. Resnick address the chairman, and if the chairman believes that those questions are relevant, he can ask your peer reviewer.
So he's going to have to ask me the question. Okay, you can ask me the question.
I'm sure Mr. Shevlin would be happy to open himself up to any cross-examination. But Mr. Chairman, what I wanted to ask your peer reviewer is, one, in connection with this presentation this evening, did he review the as-is conditions presently at the high school? Two, I wanted to ask him if he's had time to review the revised plans and conditions and responses that he's obtained relative to his peer review from PAR. And I wanted to ask him if those conditions and if those revised plans have in fact or will, in his professional opinion, improve the status quo as it presently is at the school based on the as-is conditions.
There's three questions.
Excuse me. One off.
I think he testified that he went through some of the paperwork he got on Monday, but wasn't able to get through all of it, so I don't know.
Yeah, he answered the question earlier.
If I may, the second and third questions, the gentleman can't really answer them because he said he's given them a cursory review because he just got them himself. I think he can answer the first question, but that's up to the chair.
Mr. Chairman, yes. I think Mr. Resnick makes a good point because we got this material so, so close to the meeting. You haven't had a chance to review it. Perhaps Mr. Clinton couldn't review everything. Now we're looking at potentially having a TRC meeting before the next meeting with both of them. I would suggest that Mr. Clinton come back to the next meeting and continue to be your peer reviewer because I'm assuming there's going to be different proposals or modified proposals. And I think that's the way to handle this, is rather than putting Mr. Clinton on the spot about what he hasn't reviewed, or, because it does sound more like a cross, maybe we could just work with, as we've been suggesting, with PAR and VHB, and come back to you, and perhaps all these questions will be answered with BVP's approval to continue to pay Mr. Clinton. Thank you.
Agreed. My opinion is that since this is an ongoing process, and as Mr. McDonald had mentioned, that Mr. Clinton has had a cursory review, but he needs to look at it in a little more depth. I think at this point in time, it makes the most sense to let's get together and see where we stand.
And
give him an actual chance to, just like the board has to do, is to go through 206 pages of material, and it's a while to digest it. You can read it once, but sometimes you have to go back and read it 2-3 times before it sinks in.
And one other thing, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Stevens just brought up, there is a time clock running. At the last meeting, we asked Mr. Kelly to agree to an extra 30 days, which is something that you ask as a matter of course when we're continuing. So I would ask Mr. Resnick to agree to another 30-day extension on the time period within which you have to make a decision. And I would also ask him to agree that BVP will continue to pay for Mr. Clinton's services to the board.
Mr. Chairman, we certainly have no objection to paying for the peer reviewer's services. With respect to an extension, I believe that Mr. Monica had indicated that it was to expire on what date? I don't think at this time that it's appropriate or needed to provide a further extension. In fact, based on the commentary from the board this evening, I think that it would make the most sense to schedule a special meeting for this matter in May. We have additional testimony from Mr. Shevlin. We'll have additional testimony from Mr. Clinton. We're also going to have representatives of BVP as well as our land use planner. And I think that it makes sense to carve out one evening to go through that, and we can discuss an extension at that time. We've certainly been amenable to it in the past, but based on the fact that it's now late April and the extension is in June 30th, I don't see any pressing reason, and at this time, we're not going to provide that. But we can certainly discuss it at the next meeting. There's no intent to put this board under the gun with respect to a vote or drafting a decision, but it's just not necessary at this time for an extension. And we can certainly discuss it if that becomes a critical issue. But to keep momentum, to keep this before the board, we think would be appropriate to schedule a special meeting for May. And I would respectfully request that the board consider that this evening. And if we do that, have the opportunity to appear before the TRC. We'll have the benefit of coming back here, as I promised, with all of our experts as well as other testimony. And at that time, we can certainly discuss an extension. I just think it's premature at this time.
So
Mr. Chairman, yeah, well, I mean, my point is that, you know, he's saying that they're not putting you under the gun, but providing the extension is the right thing to do. In theory, you could make a decision tonight based on the testimony you heard tonight. So, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't agree to a continuance based on the fact that you could make a decision tonight based on what you heard tonight.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. McDonald?
if I may point out, we're only asking for an extension because of this. And I'm ready to make a motion tonight based upon what I've heard if we don't get an extension.
I have to tell you, I don't think that's necessary at all. You have a deadline of June 30th. I've requested that we be put a special meeting in May, or at the very least at a regularly scheduled meeting in May, and we can discuss it at that time. And we can certainly discuss it with your staff after we have the opportunity to participate in a tech review committee. But I don't think it's appropriate to give an extension this time out to June 30th, out past June 30th. It's presently at June 30th. That's 8 weeks. We're going to be before you again. We can discuss it at that time.
Well, you don't think it's appropriate, but let me ask you. Well, why don't you want to extend? What's your reasoning for not wanting to extend?
I think that there's ample time to have multiple hearings before this board prior to that expiration date. It's April. We can have meetings in May, either special or regular or both. We would welcome that. And we can also have a special meeting or a regular meeting in June. So we've got the opportunity in a reasonable way to have 4 additional meetings potentially, in addition to this evening, in addition to the previous meeting, and 6 is more than enough to review a project of this nature and master plan.
So you're willing to discuss an extension, but that's only, you're saying discussing. So we could say, well, we think we need to extend it, and you'll say, absolutely not. Am I correct? Because you're saying we can discuss. You're not saying that we can actually grant you another extension.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to give me a moment, I'd be happy to speak with my client.
Okay.
It was not my expectation that there would be a request for an extension of the deadline, given that it's 8 weeks out.
Okay.
But if you'd like to give me a moment, be happy to confer with them.
Sure, I mean, I don't want to belabor this any more than we have to, okay? I understand that we've been at, well, you and the applicant has been at this since, as you said, since the October 18th, 21, okay? We haven't been involved. The first time we got involved was when it was presented to us last month, okay? So I just want to make, I'm concerned that if we get to the June close, or we approach the June date, you say, no, we don't want to extend it.
Well, I think that's the reason why we're requesting that a special meeting be scheduled early in May, and we'll have the benefit of coming back to you after having the tech review, and we can discuss the extension at that time, and there's ample time for this board to vote on this project, to review a draft decision. If we come back to you the first or second week of May, you have over a month and a half. You have 6 weeks before the extension. And I'll represent you. We're not going to be unreasonable, but given the fact that as we sit here today, we're talking about an expiration at the end of June 30th, I just don't think it's at a critical point right now. We would like to schedule a special meeting. And then you will have absolutely no concern, because we can discuss the extension at that time, and we come back to you with the aid of this board having reviewed all of our materials, as well as your peer reviewer, and answer your questions and provide testimony. But to say to me that if we don't give you an extension for 8 weeks, you're ready to take a vote this evening, I'm not sure I understand that.
I'm not saying we're ready.
I'm not sure I understand that.
I'm not saying that we're ready, but we could. Okay.
You certainly could. If you'd
Yes.
like, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to speak to my client and advise you as to whether or not they have an appetite for an extension at this time. Would you like to give me a moment?
Sure.
Yes. May I proceed? Mr. Chairman, I've had the opportunity to speak with my client with respect to the request for an extension, continuance to the extension. We would be willing to provide the town an additional 2 weeks at this time to July 15th, but we would condition that on setting a TRC meeting for the first week of May and setting a special meeting before this board in the second week of May or around that time. So we'd give you those 2 weeks, pushing it into mid-July, but we would like to be before this board again and have the opportunity to participate with the TRC in that time frame. First week of May for TRC, second week with respect to the board. And I understand that everybody has schedules, so we're going to have to mutually work that out, but I think that's a appropriate response. We'll give you 2 weeks, and what we're requesting is that we have the ability to move forward in May, at least with further testimony.
You're going through an extension. I'm hoping that we can, resolve everything before June. That is what I'm hoping for. But who knows where we are, because we still have all this stuff to go through, and I'm sure that you and your engineer and our peer review engineer, they have to work things out too. So it's
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, I think this is unreasonable, frankly. I think we have a regularly scheduled meeting every month. This planning department, they will not admit this, but has bent over backward for this applicant. We've turned around material very quickly. We provide a usual professional level of expertise. This aggressive schedule is of their making, not the town's. And we have a lot on our plates. So I think, as the solicitor said, we've offered repeatedly to have a TRC, which I think is in their best interest because it is a public process. It's open to the public, and they have the opportunity to have all the departments that have jurisdiction over planning and development, including the police and the fire, building, zoning, DPW. This is important. This helps them move their project forward more quickly. The solicitor in attendance as well. At this level, we can get into the issues that you're grappling with, but we don't have the answers to at this point. So I feel that we should schedule a TRC. We can't possibly do it next week. I don't know, this is rather arbitrary. And frankly, I don't think it's reasonable. So I would say, let's schedule a TRC and then work hard on that cooperatively, which we welcome always, and get to a place where at the next meeting, you will have either a package that the department has vetted, and frankly, we don't enjoy coming out against projects. We rarely do it. We try and work, as Glenn says, iteratively, but this has been a process that has unfortunately had some adversarial character to it, which we're not happy about or comfortable with. So communication is important, but heretofore, it's been, back and forth, and we prefer to do it. We prefer to have it done in a cooperative way. If we cannot come to an agreement, that's fine, but at least we have an adequate opportunity to vet it, which I'm not convinced that's happened to the degree it should.
Personally, for me, I don't think 2 weeks time for a special meeting. I think it doesn't work for me. I don't think there's enough time for the board or for all the parties concerned to iron out some of the issues that need to be ironed out. So I'm not willing to entertain a special meeting in 2 weeks.
Mr. Chairman, can I amend my motion?
Mr. Scott?
I move that we continue this meeting and that the planning department schedule a DRC meeting with the applicant at a reasonable time before our next regularly scheduled meeting.
I'm going to renew the request that the applicant work with the town and grant that extension of the time period to protect the planning board and the decision-making process.
Mrs. Salvatore, that's to ask for another 30-day continuance, is that correct?
It's just the time within which, not that you're going to take it, but the time within which you have to make a decision. Because this is a very important project. There's a lot going on, and I think it behooves the applicant to continue to work with the town and provide, like, as Mr. Stevens said, provide you with a good vetting and proceed in our normal course.
If I may, I was willing to take a vote on this tonight before noontime on Monday. I thought we were going to be able to do that. And when we received this, I knew we weren't going to be able to. And I'm not going to question motive. It's a lot of work. It probably took them time to produce it. But once they did, and when they produced it late, 2 days, 2.5 days, 2 days and 6 hours before, I can't get my arms around not granting the courtesy of an extension, because in effect, we lost a meeting tonight on this matter. We lost a meeting. And we're asking for it back by an extension. That's what we're doing. And I, quite frankly, I know he met with his client, but I don't understand his client's position, because perhaps the board won't want to do it, and I won't make the motion if it's the sense of the board to not do it and to just try and get a TRC meeting. But when I said I would make a motion, I meant what I said.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. So here we are. We're still asking for the extension. I don't think we're going to need to take it, to be honest with you. That takes us into July.
We just need a motion for an extension? Do we vote on that first? Or is that?
No, Mr. Resnick has to agree to it
I see.
on the record.
Okay.
Just for purposes of clarification, since there's no appetite for a special meeting, will we be placed on the regularly scheduled meeting in May with respect to this application?
I don't see why not. If everything is, that needs to be submitted to the town is submitted to the town in a timely fashion, certainly, we've done that before. This board has always done that before.
So if staff is willing to make reasonable efforts to work with us to schedule a TRC meeting, accommodating time for everyone, and if we're going to be on the May calendar, I would provide you that July 15th, 2-week extension. That's fair, and we can discuss it at the next May meeting, whether an additional extension is required based on where we are at that time.
Mr. Chairman, the
Mr. Stevens?
the TRC meetings on a monthly basis, if they're required, are the second Thursday at 10 a.m.
We can make ourselves available for that. Absolutely.
Okay. Are we all set?
That's up to you. I mean, he's giving us something. I still think it's the good faith effort, as Mr. McDonald said, you essentially lost the night, would be to give the 30 days.
Yes.
I'm not really sure I understand why there was a loss of the evening. We provided testimony from an expert. We obtained testimony from your peer reviewer. It's not a loss of an evening. It's a step in a review process. Thank you.
Well, I disagree. We lost an evening.
I disagree. Thank you.
I think what Mr. McDonald's getting at, if we had received this in a timely fashion, okay, and we were able to get our homework done, okay, I think what Mr. McDonald is saying is we could probably have voted on this application tonight, and now it's been delayed. Am I correct? Is that what you're getting at?
I was merely trying to say that I thought everyone who testified, plus everyone else, including the remainder of the applicant's professionals, would testify. And we would have all that we needed at that point to be able to vote on the application. That's what I was attempting to say. And we never got there because of the material that we have that we haven't been able to process yet.
Right. I think that's what he was getting at, is how we sort of lost that month. I think that was the point that he was getting at. Yes, and I agree with you. We got a lot accomplished tonight. We've got taken care of at least the first go-around with the traffic. We've got the presentation.
And I'm very pleased that the chair and this board allowed us to go forward with this evening, because at the outset, it didn't look like we would be presenting at all. So I thank the board.
You got to understand that this board is, our job is to work with the applicants. Okay, that's our goal. We're not the enemy up here, and we don't like to be perceived as being the enemy either. That we really want, and I know our staff tries to do their best, but when there are red flags that come up and they bring it up to our attention, then we have to, address them at that point in time.
Understood. Mr.
So, again, I am pleased that we've gotten as far as we have to tonight. So, Mr. Scown, do you want to amend it to go to the second of July? Okay. Yes. Right.
So you have to continue to that date certain in order so that they don't have to re-advertise?
Absolutely, which makes it, and we got the calendar out?
The next meeting is the 25th.
The day before my anniversary. Okay. Right, go ahead.
Do you want me to make the whole motion again?
Yes, to be clear.
Okay, I move to continue this matter to our May 25th meeting and to accept the extension to July, second week of July. July 15th, 2022.
I have a motion by Mr. Scown. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Reese. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes yes. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. We look forward to presenting in May.
Thank you. And motion never fails. Thank you, Maria. And, motion by Maria, seconded by Ms. Reese. All in favor?
Aye.